flip the result from last year. Very possible. But on the other side of things, I'm looking at North Quincy. I think North Quincy has proven that they can also, keep up with the toughest competition out there. And unless Hopkinton has something to say about that, who knows? Hopkinton could get knocked off by Bishop Stang, but I think the projection for that end is North Quincy versus Hopkinton, and then I could see Norwell coming out at the top end. Norwell really turned it on down the stretch and having one of their best seasons in a while. So I think it's going to be a very competitive field until you get to the quarterfinals, and I think then Hanover finds a way to pull away.
I think in that upper bracket, don't sleep on Coyle Cassidy. They've been very good all season long. I think they're going to give Norwell a run for their money if things go the way that they're supposed to. North Quincy has been strong all season long, and of course, in traditional North Quincy fashion, it's from the goal out. Matt Gibbons has always had good goaltenders, and it's funny because his goaltenders have always been able to handle the puck, acting as almost like a third defenseman back there. So it remains to be seen, of course, if things go the way that the seeds are, we'll have a very nice semifinal matchups of North Quincy versus Norwell and Hanover versus Bourne, but of course we know things don't always work that way.
Yes, there's always an upset or two in the mix that you're not expecting. And who knows, it could be Coyle and Cassidy coming out and possibly knocking off Norwell if Norwell does end up making it to the quarterfinals. My projected Final Four there is going to be, however, Hanover, Bourne, North Quincy, and Norwell. That's just my projection.
I think North Quincy could be in trouble if they don't come out fast in their first game. You always see those top seeds kind of have a casual, feel-it-out approach in that first game, and it can sometimes doom them. When you look at who they're going to have to face, if Rockland can beat Middleborough Ho, you got a Rockland team that's well-coached, experienced from a couple of strong seasons in the past, and they could come out quick against a North Quincy team, catch them off guard, and then hold off. So that first game for North Quincy, if they can get over that hump, then you're looking at a pretty decent path to the semifinals.
Yeah, and we always used to say, and Bill Donovan, who was the head coach at Silver Lake before I was, would say sometimes you want to play that preliminary game. You bring up a great point, Dan. You play in that preliminary game and you get your feet under you. Yeah, it's survive and advance in some instances, but you win that first game. Now you're going to play a cold team like North Quincy who's waiting. They'll have probably played their last game on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday of this past week, and then they won't play again until next Wednesday or Thursday. So they might go a whole week without playing a competitive game. Whereas Rockland and Hull are going to play on Tuesday night. So that's there's something to be said about that. And same with Diamond and St. John Paul. They're going to play Monday night at 7:30. Norwell's going to be waiting for them, and Norwell's going to be cold. It's been a while since Norwell played their last game. I think played their last game was that Wednesday night, correct? The Gould tournament.
Yes, and actually, Norwell impressed me just based on the fact that they were able to keep things together. They didn't get flustered after falling behind a Pembroke team that has had their share of struggles this year, trailing by 2 goals entering that consolation game's third period. They managed to rattle off 4 quick ones, come back, win 6-4 to take that game. There's some guys on that team that obviously will cause some problems for the likes of Hanover or other teams in this bracket at some point.
Yeah, as far as my 4 teams go, I like Hanover, I like Bourne, I like North Quincy, and I think Coyle with the upset.
You think Coyle's going to pull this one?
I really do. For some reason, I got a feeling. I mean, Norwell is very good. Obviously, as the number 2 seed, 15-4-2 overall. And then you look down at Coyle's record; they're 12-6-2. I think it's not necessarily a giant gap there between the 2 and the 10 seed as far as records go or as far as talent goes. And they're both playing very different schedules. You look at what Norwell plays in the South Shore League versus what Coyle is playing against. So it remains to be seen. Of course, we're into the good time of the year here. This is the best time of year, right? Forget Christmas; it's your MIAA tournament time. Perhaps we can bring Jake Levin back in here.
We can wrap things up.
As we can wrap things up here, Jake Levin can come back in.
But a quick note about Rockland, a player that has impressed me to this point is Evan Gormley. Has really, stuck out in that end. So another possible upset, as you just mentioned. Definitely watch out for Rockland as a potential Cinderella team. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
And I'll note something about Norwell, both on the boys and the girls side. They had strong seasons, but and they got top 4 seeds in their respective divisions. But I don't think either of them will make it to the semifinal round.
Okay. Hey, you heard it here first. Let's bring Jake in here for one final.
Brandon, thank you. All right, gentlemen, always a pleasure here with the MyHockeyLive live selection Saturday show. I want to thank our contributors Dan Shulman and Brendan Connolly. You will be able to read each of these two in our official tournament programs. We got, let's see if I can get this right. You're doing Division 2 girls. Division 1 girls. See, I'm already off to a bad start. And Brendan will be writing about Division 2 boys.
There you go. You got that one right.
All right. And Joey McDermott, he doesn't even know it yet. He's going to be doing some writing for us for that tournament program as well. As will I. I got you covered on Division 3 South this year, I believe. We'll have Jim Clark on the Super 8. We'll have, what else? We got Rich McClone, Division 1 South. Wesley Sykes, Division 2 North. Lenny Rowe on Division 1 Girls. Division 2 Girls. Sorry, Dan. We simply put, we have an all-star crew. Some of the best high school hockey minds in the state, I like to think, and I'm looking forward to the finished products of these programs.
I mean, it's an honor to be put in the same class with these guys. I don't think I could ever keep up with the likes of, in the slot, Jim Clark, who's the expert, as we all know. But I'll try my best, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm sure you can get a copy of it at any of the postseason games, especially at Gallo, correct?
You sure can. Gallo, Chelmsford, Saugus, Canton. I'm hearing there's going to be a lot of games at the Canton Ice House this year, which is nice. It's another great rink.
And so writing these previews, at least from my perspective, you learn a lot about the teams. You look really in depth at the way they've closed out the season, and a lot of postseason momentum comes from how you end the regular season. You end it with a couple of wins. You might be able to string some in the postseason as well, but then you come in cold, and it might not end up being a long tournament for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, at least that's how I look at it with the D1 girls. Austin Prep, they're 20-0, and everyone has them as a favorite to win. But their last 3 games, they have not played their best hockey. And you got a Methuen-Tewksbury team at number 3, who we talked about.
Sure.
Who's coming in on the back of winning an in-season tournament to close the season. And I honestly got to say they're my favorites.
And they have the official MyHockeyLive Player of the Month for January, presented by Sullivan Tire in Julia Masada, who has simply lit it up for the Red Rangers, I believe they're known, combining the mascot of Tewksbury and Methuen. So, folks, follow this tournament. It's going to be awesome. MyHockeyLive, Boston Globe, the Boston Herald, WATD, and every other publication you can find. Listen to them, watch them, read them. It's going to be an awesome tournament. We'll have you covered wall to wall. So thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you to Adam, the producer, back there, and to Brandon Hall, Mark Igo, Jim Clark, Dan Shine, John Flaherty, John Missouri, Joey McDermott, everybody else who came on here today. Thank you, and we'll see you back here next year. But really, we'll see you Monday night at the play-in games in Chelmsford. Until then, MyHockeyLive.
And clear.
Sweet. Stuff, boys.
Yeah, I said much review, all right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that.
Well, now that I know I'm only doing D2 boys, that feels better, because you said it's wide open, like I was going to do both of them. But now that
All right, so let's see. Let's break this down.
What do I do?
Can you do D1 North for me? Have somebody pull out. Okay. So let's see. I got Joey on D1 North, Wes on D2 North,
Clark, you on Super 8.
Clarky on Super 8, Rich on D1 South, D1 D2 South, me on D3 South, Shulman D1 Girls, Lenny D2 Girls. Yeah, and I'm doing both D3s, right? I usually do that. Yeah. And Connor or somebody else. We'll see. Dan, pleasure. Thank you for your help today. Seriously, thank you all you guys. Brady, you want to try your hand at some writing?
I don't know if I have time, to be honest with you.
Nah, that's fine. That's fine. You got kids.
Normally I would, but this week is going to be crazy.
Nah, that's fine.
I mean, I'm sure half the story is going to be on Canton anyway, or at least the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then a quick breakdown of the others.
All right.
So what does this entail, Jake? What do you want?
Yeah, I should probably send you some samples.
I don't know.
Just give him a tournament book.
I have one. I have last year's of it.
Just read. Yeah.
Okay.
Glance through.
You want me to send it to you by, when do you need it by?
Ooh, tonight that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You can get it tomorrow morning. That's fine too.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alright,
Tonight.
perfect.
Yeah. Let's call it noon tomorrow.
Okay,
The hard deadline.
works for me.
That'd be fantastic.
High noon.
Sounds good.
Sure. Thank you.
High noon. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Pleasure.
I'll get started on it now.
Yeah, I gotta write a little bit here. I'm not going anywhere yet. We'll just go win Division 1 instead. I did come up short against Reading, but anyways, that's the show. That's the last team that did make it all the way to the Garden after losing the Super 8 play-in round. It's for as much as it is house money, you're guaranteed nothing. I know Zavarian, another example. I believe they're the last team, at least in the South, to lose the play-in game to even make it to the Division I South final. That'd be back in 2015. Now, that was the year that Hingham was on the Super 8 watch list, and they didn't get in, so they were the 10 seed in the Division I South. I mean, if that's not the call for power seeding, I don't know what is. So not very fair circumstances for either team in that situation. Going up against one another in the sectional final, Hingham ultimately wins, and then they go beat St. Mary's at the Garden 2015. So I'm always fascinated by these teams that lose the play-in game and see how far their run lasts. Because sometimes you run out of motivation. You set your sights on the Super 8, and it's like, you're out.
Yeah,
Does it
why
really
do you
matter?
think? Why do you think they haven't succeeded? Do you think it's because they just get too down after that loss and too high just for that one play-in game, or do you think they take the other ones a little less seriously?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I don't think it's a case of anybody taking any game less seriously. Brandon, maybe you could speak to this as a coach. I mean, I highly doubt that's a case with any of these teams. I mean, we just spoke about Braintree and the fire that was lit under them,
Yeah.
so they were bound to go on a big run. I think sometimes you feel, maybe you were a little snubbed getting a play in at all. You feel like you should have been in the top 6, whether that's a valid feeling or not. You can always feel that way, and then you say, all right, fine, we'll go win our state tournament instead, and
Yeah.
it just hasn't worked out. Maybe it is getting a little tired out, putting all your eggs in that basket. I know 2017 was probably the best set of play-in games in recent memory. We had We had Marshfield, Austin Prep. Marshfield comes back from a 3-0 deficit, wins 4-3 in overtime. Austin Prep, after an emotional game like that, they just didn't have a lot left in the sectional tournament. Walpole CM, that was a ball game too. Another overtime game. I think it was 3-2 Walpole. It might have been 2-1, but it was a 1-goal game, Walpole in overtime. And again, CM, it was just such a deflating game that it's hard to come back from that and get fired back up. So I don't know. Speak to that as a coach.
I think some of it might be that you come back out of that Super 8 tournament, you've got a target on your back in Division 1. It's us against them. In my room, we're going to say, we've got these guys played in the Super 8 and they think they're better than they are. Let's show them really who belongs in this tournament. The other thing is, it's really hard. I don't mean to oversimplify this. It's really hard to win a state championship. You play in that Super 8 play-in game and you lose, and then you bounce back into Division 1. You've still got 3 or 4 rounds just to get to the final.
Very true.
You're going to win 3 games to get to the sectional final, and then a 4th game to get back to the state championship. So, in that 3-week span, you're playing 5-6 games. That's a lot of hockey at high level, high stress. It's hard to win a state championship. Period.
I'm sure Jim Clark, when he joins us in about 5 minutes, hopefully a little less, will have an answer as to the last team to drop down from the Super 8 play-in to go on and win a state championship. As far as I know, Braintree's the last team to lose and then at least go to the Garden. And I'm sure it has happened. I mean, the play-in round has been around since, 2000, 2001 now. So if anyone knows, it'll be Jim Clark. What are some other things we like about these Super 8 potential first-round matchups?
I don't think you'd see St. Mary's and Marshfield in any other circumstance other than a Super 8 playing
Nope.
game.
State championship game potentially.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
it. 2 teams that never see one another. That's right.
Makes
I
it
do enjoy
interesting.
that aspect of the tournament. You get these matchups that just generally don't happen. Now, every now and then you'll get a matchup where the teams happen to play in some in-season tournament. Hingham and Arlington Catholic is an example. They play every year in the Buddy Ferrer Classic, and they wound up meeting at the Division I state championship game in 2015. That's kind of rare for there to be familiarity between teams meeting up at the Garden. Unless we're talking the Super 8 and the Catholic Conference schools, BC High, CM, etc. It is rare to see that, last year's Division I title game, Marshfield, Waltham, they just so happen to play each other in the regular season every year. Now, Waltham's not that far north, so geography does play a role in it. They're in Division I North, but, they border some towns that are in the south section. In Marshfield, they're south. They're not Cape Cod south and South Coast south. So that's a very interesting point there, Joey. The role geography plays in making these tournament matchups that much more exciting.
Personally, I would have loved to have seen Duxbury and Marshfield go at it.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
It would have been great, a rematch of the Green Cup.
Yep.
2 towns that border each other, and my South Shore bias and my South sectional bias. I would have loved to have seen those 2 teams. I do appreciate, however, that there's an opportunity for two more publics to jump into that Super 8 group
Right.
out of the play-in. I love the idea of the play-in in the sense that, here's an opportunity for two more teams to be involved in the process. You go back to when the Super 8 was 8.
Yes.
That having this set up, I really do like it in the sense that it gives more schools an opportunity to play at such a high level and to get recognized for that. And for public schools, it's great. And we don't talk about recruiting at a high school level for public schools because it's against the law, or against the law here in this building. It's against the rules in the MIAA. But think about the recruiting tool that is for you. You got a kid thinking about going to play at a private or going to play at a prep school or play juniors, God forbid. The opportunity to play for a Marshfield or a Duxbury, or for that matter, Framingham or Arlington or Hingham, to say, I'm going to grow up in this town, I'm going to play youth hockey in this town, and then I'm going to go to high school in this town and play at a really high level. At that point, it does a lot for you as a hockey town, in the same way that Bobby Orr built rinks in Boston in the 70s.
Well, how about Marshfield now? 2 Super 8 appearances in 3 years, with an appearance in the Division I state title game sandwiched in between.
Mm-hmm.
Marshfield, they're probably going to have to start cutting kids from the JV programs. Even so many kids are going to start trying out and want to be part of that next great Marshfield team. They're, I don't know if you can call it a dynasty necessarily because they haven't won anything yet. But to get to 2 Super 8s in 3 years, when you're a public school like a Marshfield, it's not a heavy hitter like Hingham, I guess. And I'm not trying to rank these teams in tiers here. This is huge for hockey in Marshfield. If they could ride this wave for years and years and years, and Dan Connolly, he'll have 600 wins before double up his already very impressive 300 wins that he picked up earlier this week. So congrats to Coach Connolly on that. Hingham, that everybody knows about Hingham. Framingham, this is their first Super 8 appearance in 15 years. I think kids in Framingham youth hockey, they're going to want to be the next Mike Tersoni.
Mm-hmm.
Get into the Super 8. And it really is important to have, if you're a public school, to have that kind of, feeder, just motivation.
Yes, it's hard as a public school. It's hard as both type of schools to get into the Super 8, but it is so hard because in a public school, you're not recruiting and you don't really know exactly what you're going to get each year. You might have kids leaving and going to the private or the prep or the junior because you're not a private school and getting the looks from other schools. So it's so hard to coach up that public school. Like there's a lot of public schools that are top in the state right now, and it's honestly impressive.
You went to Bridgewater Raynham, correct?
Yes.
You think about what talent left Bridgewater right now. You get
I was
3
about to say
Kramers.
that.
You get the 3 Kramers, and then there's a kid at their academy.
Not to mention Josh Milso, also BC High from Bridgewater.
4 kids from
Bridgewater are on BCI.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So let's see, what else do we got here, boys?
You got the North Division 3 bracket that's available now.
North Division 3. Let's check it out.
So looking at that, we've got 3 teams that get buys into the quarterfinals. You got Newton South, Lynn, and Lowell. They'll all get buys as the 1, 2, and 3 seeds. And then we have first round matchups: Essex Tech versus Bedford, Drake at Tingsboro versus Northeast Regional, Wayland versus Watertown, Hamilton Wenham versus Latin Academy, and Shawsheen versus Swampscott. Those will be your first round matchups.
I
I
love
like
Newton
Lowell.
South.
Oh, they're both going across the board.
Ooh, all right. Yeah, Newton South and Lowell, I saw them play each other in the regular season. That was a game at Watertown, John Ryan Rink in, let's see, when would that have been? Back in, I'm not trying to say here, back on February 2nd. So we got Jim Clark and Brendan Connor. It's just everybody's lining up to be on here. We're in demand right now. So I think Clarkie's going to join us first, which will be exciting.
Pass that to Mark.
Jake Dan Shine also is going to
Absolutely. Dan Shine wants to come on too. Oh, right. It's going to be a parade here, so we'll let Clarkie on first. There he is, Jim Clark, Boston Herald in the slot. If you can figure out the
headphones on the right way.
figure out the headset. All right, there we go. Jim Clark, the preeminent high school hockey mind, I would say, in Massachusetts. No question. That a fair assessment?
Mind or mindless. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
Later in the day, we'll discuss that. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get right to it. Did the committee get it right for the Super 8?
I had the same 10 teams this morning. They flipped some of the matchups. 3-6, I have in different orders, but ultimately it all came out pretty much the same in the end. You're going to wind up with the same matchups, and once they get to the second round is when things will change a little bit. But the committee did their homework. They asked the right questions, and I think they had the right 10 teams in there.
So we were discussing earlier how difficult it is, even though you might be playing with house money as a play-in team, theoretically, just because you drop back down to your sectional tournament, there's no guarantee you're going to then go on a run to the Garden. We believe Braintree is the last team to lose and then get to the Garden.
Yep.
And I figured you would know the answer, the last team to lose and then win the whole thing.
Might go back to when maybe Archbishop Williams, Arlington Catholic, I think, played the state final. Off the top of my head, I don't know that, but that might have been maybe around the 2010, 11, somewhere in that ballpark.
Sounds right.
Yeah, AC beating Archie's in the final. I believe that might have been it. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because you just don't know, 16, 17, 18-year-old high school kids how they're going to react to the shock and the heartbreak of not getting to the Super 8. You just don't know how they build themselves up, and now the coaches have to kind of go back and refocus and regroup and get the kids ready to play in the D1 tournament. And it's not just the playing losers; it's the teams that actually were on the bubble that didn't get in as well. It's really tough for these coaches to kind of get them back on a different path a little bit. But there's no rhyme or reason as to how it all works out. Every year is different.
I think Hingham would be the most recent example of a team shut out from the Super 8 altogether that said, all right, we don't need your Super 8, we'll go win the Division I title anyways.
Yeah.
I can't think of another team that really had a cause to be snubbed, I guess, rather than Hingham since 2015. Do you think any of the teams that didn't make it in this year, whether that's Canton in Division II, which is unique unto itself, or then maybe Winchester, Melrose, Reading, Burlington, pick a Middlesex League team, any teams this year that can use their snub as a little motivation to say, we don't need the Super 8, go on a run that you can see?
I mean, obviously Canton's an obvious one, but that's a completely different animal because, when you're talking about Division II, that's just, they were going to be the favorite in Division II with there and there no matter what, I would think. There's obviously some good teams in the South and then, some very good teams coming out of D2 North, but Canton's kind of been, a little bit above the rest of the pack. It's hard to say until you really see what the matchups are going to be. I try not to project the D1 tournaments until I have an idea, what the matchups are going to be. Again, getting back to the whole psychological aspect of it, it's this is when the coaches are going to kind of make their money a little bit and try to get these guys back in the right frame of mind to because the season's not over. I mean, there's an end today for any of these teams, so we'll see what happens.
I think if anything for Canton, it's been a distraction. They're a Division II team. There's question, should they be in? Should they not be in? Should a Division II team even be in the conversation? Do they play a tough enough schedule? And these kids are saying, we're 19-0-1. Why is anyone questioning anything we've done? Do we really want to play in this thing?
Right.
For a lot of that, I think it was probably a giant distraction for Canton. And now we know where we are. We're in Division II. We're the number 1 seed. Let's go. Let's go take this thing.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I'll throw out another team. Masconomet was the team that was on the board Division II, and I read some comments from their coach, Andrew Jackson, the other day. And it was not necessarily so much in the vein of we're on the watch list and all of a sudden now all our eyes are up on us, but they had a game against Danvers on Monday that they wound up losing 2-0, and he just kind of talked about how the routine was just completely different. And he was speaking more to the fact that it was a vacation week game. The word he used was structure. He said they didn't have the structure of, school, practice, game, homework, go to sleep, that kind of thing. And he thought that kind of affected him a little bit. But I'm sure that, once you start throwing that, being under the watch, so to speak, of the watch list into the equation, certainly that has a lot to do with it. And I would think more so for the teams that haven't been there before. You start to see, once these teams get there maybe 2-3 years in a row or 3 out of 4 years or whatever, not so much in the tournament, but at least in the conversation, they seem to kind of handle the outside influences a little bit better and just kind of, play hockey and let it happen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. The vacation is definitely a distraction, and kids get off schedule, coaches get off schedule, you're practicing at weird times. You don't usually have your 2:30 every single day thing because there are tournaments going on at the rink, so they bump you to the morning, right. Or usually you're a morning team and you bump to the afternoon to give the kids a little bit of a break. all those things can play a significant factor in that. I totally with you there, 100%.
Yeah, now you're going into a tournament situation where, you know, you don't know, you know, when your next game is gonna be or who it's gonna be against and all that. And, you know, that just kind of throws your preparation and your mindset off a little bit as well.
We got Dan Shine getting ready to jump on here now too. He's gonna spell Brandon for a little bit. Dan Shine, longtime coach at Arlington Catholic. 40 years now, Dan? 40 years. The
Yes.
winningest active coach in Massachusetts.
This was number 40.
All right. Well, welcome aboard, Dan. So you were also the chairman of the MIAA Ice Hockey Committee. Is that the correct title?
Yes, I am.
I would use. Okay. So getting into the Super 8 committee, the selection process this season, I think a lot of people felt the top 6 was fairly straightforward and had a pretty good idea of at least 2, probably 3 of the playing teams. That last spot, I can't recall ever being, at least in my time working with this, such a, you know, throw something against the wall. It could be any number, 5, 6, 7 different teams. What's that like for you and the committee in making sure that you get it right?
Well, I think one of the things is that you really can't get it wrong. And I think in this year's field, I think you're going to see the 7 through 10 group. You're going to see a 2 great games. I said any one of those teams certainly is going to have a great opportunity to advance, and I think there's going to be a lot of interest in those 2 games. I think all 4 teams are quality teams.
Jim, feel free to ask Dan questions as well.
I mean, obviously, I think one of the, you know, you hear criticisms and complaints all the time, and they always say they try to, you know, they try to fit certain matchups or whatever. And if you sit in the room, you know, you've been in the room for 29 years now, and it just happens so fast that I don't think any individual committee member, never mind the whole committee as a group, can even, you know, parse it that much and think that far ahead. I mean, you're basically just, you know, each member is trying to pick who he thinks is the right team at that right spot.
Yeah, I think you're right on, Jim, and I think that the committee members that are doing the actual voting, when teams are nominated, and the process in which that we use, you really can't look at who teams are going to play, and especially with the new format that we started last year. You know, if you lose in the first round, you drop down into the losers bracket, and that's all pending on what happens in other games, and you have really no control. You know, years ago when you played a 2 out of 3 format, you know, you at least knew that you were matched up against a team for 2 out of 3. You know, you had to win 2 out of 3 to advance. This is a whole different ball game now, and I think it gives everyone more of a chance to advance than in the past.
Is this your favorite format, the double elimination, or I guess the modified double elimination?
It's mine. It's my favorite. I think it's the fairest. I think it creates more excitement when you're playing a different opponent every night, and your opponent dictates what happens in other games, where in the past that wasn't the case. So this is what we started out with, 29 years ago. Although we did have a double elimination game at the end for a couple of years, and then we moved to the single final. But this is, I think, is the best for high school hockey.
I think one of the things that people, you know, they overlook, and this is the way you guys have been doing it over the years, is, like you just mentioned, back in the early 90s when this tournament first started, the way the garden setup was, you had the old garden, the schedule wasn't quite as, you know, rigid as it is now. You were able to afford the opportunity of and have it as a true double elimination bracket, whereas if, say, you know, back in the day when BCI would come out of the winners bracket and CM would come out of the losers bracket and then only have to play them once, if the loser winds up winning that game, at least they would have the opportunity to go on and play the second game in a true double elimination. But obviously what you're trying to do now is you're trying to have all of the championship games on quote-unquote championship Sunday. So that's where the modified part of it comes in, and I think that's, you know, something people kind of, you know, need to be reminded of every so often.
Yeah, and I think people have bought into the fact that there's a championship Sunday, and that's where all the championship games are played. The winners bracket, obviously, you're gonna play less games, and the downside to this format really is if the team that advances through the losers bracket, they're gonna play, 6 games to win, and the winners bracket is gonna all be playing in their 4th game on the championship Sunday. So that's the downside, but like everything, you can't control everything, and if you only wanna play 4 games, then you better win.
But I think if you ask some coaches, they would say that there's almost a little bit too much downtime if you come through the winners bracket too. So, you can look at it both ways.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as I said, I think we found that over time that this is probably the format that best suits high school hockey.
I've been doing this for 19 years, and I think that I've seen, you obviously did the Olympic pool play, and that had, its own laundry list of issues from the tiebreakers and everything.
Goal quotient.
And, yeah, I mean, it was crazy. And then, I think the quote-unquote hockey's the best 2 out of 3 format that you guys tried. In theory, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but it probably, in execution, just didn't pan out the way it should. I mean, way too often you were getting, teams that were winning in back, 2 games, and then there was no interest in the second game. It worked the best when a series went to a 3rd game, because that was a true elimination game for
Correct.
both teams, and I think that was when it was ideal. It just didn't happen often enough.
Yeah, I think the schools and the communities lost interest in that format based on exactly what you just said, that, they'd say, okay, well, we're guaranteed 2 games. Let's see if we win tonight, and if we do, I'll go to the next game. Or if you lose the first one, now, if we lose again, we're out. So I think as a result of that, and I think that's where this came back to life, this format, the ice hockey committee felt that we were losing a little bit of interest. And the other thing too is we had to book ice in advance, and sometimes that game wasn't played, and it just complicated everything.
Yeah.
So, and as you said, in theory it sounded good, but at the end it didn't work out like we had hoped.
You know exactly how many games you're going to get in this tournament.
Absolutely,
So, yeah.
right.
I got a question for you, Dan. For teams that missed out on the tournament, the Super 8 tournament this season, what advice do you have for those teams and differences they can make next year in terms of the scheduling? We know that's what it really comes down to. And I guess my question is, how much emphasis really is on your non-league schedule when we're talking about who's getting in the Super 8 and whether you're weighing the resume of Team A versus Team B, how much that plays a role?
I think there's 2 things you have to look at. One is non-league schedule is very important, obviously. And you take this year, this was an odd year in high school hockey because we had some powerhouses that really weren't powerhouses this year.
Sure.
You take them all in Catholic, you take Central Catholic,
Sure.
those 2 in particular. Where normally they're in the mix for one of the top 5 spots.
Right.
All right? I think Malden Catholic was the #1 seed multiple years in a row.
2 years ago, I
2
believe, as far
okay.
as recently 2
So-
years ago.
So you have to look at your non-league schedule. But the bottom line is, you can't overextend your schedule, because if you lose too many of those games, that's gonna be held against you. So you have to really know what kind of a team you're gonna have and how far you can actually reach. It's like anything, we can use this, wins are important, but they're not the only thing they look at. It's kind of like the NCAA basketball tournament. Who did you beat? And for the most part, you need a good record. You're not going to get in this without a real quality record, and you're not going to get in this without some quality wins against some of the top teams. But you also have to know how good your team is, because if you reach too far, you could play yourself right out of the tournament.
So I guess my follow-up is, what could Canton have done differently, if anything? I know Division II, virtually unprecedented. It's happened once before.
I believe twice. Tewksbury in '96, and then I think St. John Shrewsbury when they were still a Central Mass team back in '93. Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with their actual schedule, so Jimmy might have to be more up to date on that.
I mean, they played, Franklin twice. They played Newburyport. They played a handful of Division I teams. They have 2 or 3 Division I opponents in their league: Mansfield, King Philip. But we've seen this come up many times over the years. Walpole, Franklin, you know, and even some of the teams that are more established now, Marshfield, Duxbury, Hingham, going way back to the early 2000s. These teams are all in the same boat, and you know, there's a portion of their schedule that they can't control, and you hope that doesn't necessarily get held against them. I mean, you know, inevitably it does a little bit, but like Dan said, and I think the non-league schedule is important in the eyes of a lot of people. You know, so you take that lesson a little bit. I think Andover kind of learned that lesson a few years ago. The coaches kind of told him, he said, "Hey, your schedule's not strong enough. You know, go out and build it up a little bit." And he did. And he played, you know, Arlington, Pope Francis, Hingham, teams like that. Last year he got into the tournament as a number 5 seed, and then they were in the running right up until the end of this year. So, you know, it's unfortunate because sometimes you might have a team, you know, a unicorn kind of team that is really built to win this year, and you might not have that opportunity again down the road, even if you do build your schedule up. So, you know, you can look at it from both sides as well.
You know, you look at some of these I'll take a peek at Framingham for a second. You know, they played an excellent non-league schedule, but one of the games that really stands out for them is they beat BC High 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge in a game like that. Now, if they play that game and they get blown out 6-1, they might not be in that 5th spot,
Right.
and probably not.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So that's important, and obviously Framingham knew they had a team that they could go out and compete against the best teams, so that paid off. I take a look at St. Mary's. St. Mary's plays a phenomenal non-league schedule. You know, they go to 2 major tournaments. They play in the Chris Sereno tournament at Malden Catholic, which 4 excellent teams. They also go out to Springfield the last week of the season and play in that tournament.
Hingham and BC High, I know.
Yeah, right, Hingham, BC High. So as a result of that they reach for the top, and sometimes that backfires on a team like that. You know, you go out to Springfield and you lose 2 in a row. They're probably not in the 8th spot today. So you have to play when it counts, and then you have other teams as well that Austin Prep plays a real strong non-league schedule. You know,
Party Fair
they,
Classic, of
right?
course.
They played Arlington. Hingham obviously they're an independent team. They have to play a tough schedule. Pope Francis falls into that same category as an independent. They have to go out and really play a non-league schedule, and they have to do a lot of traveling. So, I know Duxbury had a great year this year. That's why I think this 7 through 10 group, these teams are all very close. I think these are going to be 2 great games on Monday night.
I got another question. Maybe, I'm not sure if not so much about the Super 8. Why is it that Hingham has been able to be so successful as an independent for so long, and we haven't really seen anyone else become an independent along those lines? I know Pope Francis and St. John Shrewsbury became one this year because the Catholic West was no longer recognized as an official conference. I know Duxbury had some run as an independent, probably going back 5-6 years ago now, maybe a little more.
Probably about 10 years ago.
10, okay, a little more. So why don't you think we've seen any other schools attempt the Hingham model, I guess?
Well, I think Hingham has done a great job of keeping their kids in town, all right? And the tradition that they have in being in this tournament in particular has really, I think, grabbed the sense of the community that if you're a hockey player, you want to play for the Hingham Harbormen. And I think that is something that Coach Messina has done there, that he has sold his program to his kids in town. And this is, growing up in their youth hockey program, this is where you want to end up. Now, they do lose kids here and there to private schools,
Sure.
I'm sure. But I think he maintains his core group of players for the most part. And I think this is something that they've done back to the Garrett Regan days, who was the coach prior to Tony. So I think that that's the key in public schools, is to keep your core players and keep them from leaving.
I mean, it's a good luxury that Hingham has, because if you look at their record against the watch list, and obviously they play as many teams on the board as anybody, but people will say, well, they have the opportunity to schedule all 22 of their games. So, but it's also tough because they don't have any built-in games. They've been fortunate that they've established their rivalries over the years, and there are obviously many teams that they play year after year after year, and they play in the Buddy Ferreira Classic and everything. So it's not like they're ultimately going out and scheduling 22 games every year. They might only have to pick up 2 or 3 from year to year. But it's taken a while for them to get there. I remember when they first were on the board in 2002, when they had just become independent, and they went through a lot of the same criticisms that everyone else, that has tried over the years went through as well. And it just took them a few years to establish themselves, and now it's kind of a given. They get that benefit of the doubt a little bit, I think. But I mean, they've proven that that they're going to be a valid team whenever they get in.
I would bet that Hingham probably has a core of about 16 games every year that are pretty much guaranteed. Right. When they play them is obviously up for debate and make schedules work. But then there's probably 4 games that probably change periodically in his schedule based on opponents that don't think they compete with the Hingham on this particular year. It might be after a large graduation year from a school that they've played a few times. So, but I think, as Jim said, he has a core of games and a core of opponents that pretty much are guaranteed every year. I mean, people know, I think, if you want to get to this status of your program, you might have to go through Hingham to get there. And a game against them, Arlington has shown that. Over the last 3 years, I think Arlington has had Hingham on their schedule, and that's you have to go through Hingham to get there.
Andover had them a couple of years ago, so that's exactly it.
I think Braintree and Burlington as well.
It's a peer program for most of these schools, the public schools that are trying to crack it, So they all kind of aspire to be what Hingham is, but they also, like Dan said, that's the model they need to follow.
All right, so I guess getting back to the Super 8 here, time for a few more questions. Do you foresee any tweaks to the format in the coming years? I know we keep hearing about this new statewide format with input from Max Preps coming for every sport, I think, other than is it swimming or something or other. But so how might that affect the Super 8 in years to come and the rest of the hockey tournaments?
Well, I'm not sure of the answer to that question, but assuming we go to max preps like they're talking about doing, it's going to actually help us, I think, determine the top 12 to 15 schools prior to coming into this meeting. This tournament that we are running now, in the process in which we get to the final 10, I don't see that changing much. Max Preps might help us determine who that top group of schools is, which might be another piece of us getting to the final 10. Because this tournament is somewhat subjective, and there is not a basic number formula that determines who the top 10 schools are. And so I see it might actually help us based on the formula that Max Preps uses, similar to what the RPI has done in the past. And it gives us an indication of who those top schools are and for what reasons. So I think it could help us.
I go back about 10 years ago, obviously, Dan, you remember back when there was actually a push to eliminate the Super 8 tournament.
Right.
And it was going through the tournament management committee. And I was actually sitting in that meeting that day, and I can't remember which member it was, wanted to know if there was a way to objectively use some kind of power ranking system to select the field, much like what we see in football with the power ratings and everything. And that was kind of what got my gears spinning a little bit as far as developing in the RPI and some of the other power rating formats. But you don't foresee any situation where it would be strictly numbers based and eliminating the committee altogether. You think the committee is still a key part of that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that if we were to do it any differently based on a numbers formula, like Max Preps or just RPI or the Walker formula, I think we lose some of what we've developed here over 29 years. As you could see, what were there, 65, 70 spectators in the room today? This has a lot of interest.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we're just going to use a numbers formula, there's no point in coming up here today and doing all this. We'll just publish the numbers on the last day. So I think this, with the formula we're using now, has created tremendous amount of interest in high school hockey. From the get-go. I mean, once once we get into February, you know, you start looking at the watch list. The newspapers are publishing the watch list. They're looking a little bit closer to your RPI, Jim, and your formula, and they're looking at the coaches poll. This is baseball has it now too, and I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see it in other sports down the road. I think this is great for high school sports, and I think hockey, it's made Massachusetts high school hockey a little bit special.
Is that particularly important considering the outside influences that hockey has with, losing kids to prep schools and junior hockey as well, trying to keep that interest in the game up?
I think it gives some kids something to shoot for that's a little bit extra than what other sports have. And we all know the problems with hockey, with junior hockey and private schools, trying to entice the better players to go there. So I think to lose this particular tournament at this stage of the game, I think would be detrimental to high school hockey.
All right.
It's been a good thing.
All right. Dan, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us. Always a
Great.
pleasure. And hey, Jim, I guess we'll just keep rocking here. I don't know if Brendan Connolly is still out there or Coach Brandon Hall. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. If any of these guys, I guess, we could always get Dan Shulman on to talk some girls hockey here. Dan Shulman. There's the girls for the Boston Globe. He'll be joining us now. Hello, Dan.
How's it going?
Welcome in. All right, so we got Dan Shulman and Jim Clark hanging on here. So, I think I'll start with maybe a question for you, Jim. How come there's no Super 8 in girls hockey? And maybe you can answer that as well.
That certainly has been approached to me in the past, and I think ultimately what it comes down to is the concern would be that it would water down the other two divisions too much if you pull, the Austin Preps and the St. Mary's and the Duxburys and teams like that out of it. You're only dealing with 88 girls hockey teams statewide as it is, as opposed to 198 on the boys' side. And the other difference is I don't think that you haven't seen the run of dominance. Let's be honest, it was a Catholic dominance that really spearheaded this whole thing for the boys' hockey back in the 80s. CM had just begun a run of, I think it was 4 out of 5 Division I state titles. Matt Yon and Dan's team, Dan Shine's team, Arlington Catholic, once they put them into the Division II tournament back in the day, give you a little history lesson, and they started dominating Division II as well. Now all the publics are looking around and saying, okay, what crumbs are left for us here? So I think that was kind of the impetus behind it, and it's obviously worked out well. So you get some coaches and some fans or whatever that they kind of wonder that is it time for girls hockey, and I'm not quite sure we've gotten to that point where if you start to see Woburn won the state title last year, Wellesley won Division II. That's two public school teams. We really haven't got to that point other than Duxbury, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago when they went on that big run of sustained dominance on the girls hockey side. I think that would probably, you would need to get to that point first before you could even entertain the conversation. That's not to say that the parity has been great for girls hockey,
Right.
because
I think Duxbury's one or two unbeaten teams again this year.
as good as Austin Prep has been the last 3 or 4 years, they have gotten upset in the tournament the last 3 years and haven't won it since 2016. And obviously everyone's consensus to win it again this year, but who's to say they're not going to run into another hot goalie and lose a 1-0 game somewhere along the line?
Yeah, and I agree. I think it just has to do with the sheer size and the amount of teams, like you were saying, in girls hockey in Massachusetts. It's not as much of a Catholic school dominance in girls hockey. Of course, you have Austin Prep, who's great this year. St. Mary's, one who's great again this year. But you also have teams like Methuen-Tewksbury, co-ops that have come out of the woodwork this year and have really established themselves as top teams in the state. And you take a look at that D1 field, you got a solid top 6 teams, and only 2 of them are Catholic schools. So even if they did go to a Super 8, it wouldn't be totally dominated by Catholic schools, but again, it's the sheer amount of programs in the state is probably what's limiting that. And even you have some D2 teams that could have made it this year. Like you take a look at Wellesley, the reigning state champion in D2. They're only a 5 seed in the Division II bracket, but I saw them play against Austin Prep their final regular season game, and they gave Austin Prep about all they could handle.
And Wellesley, they were also 3-time runner-ups, I believe, Division II girls. I guess there was a gap. They won last year. There was a gap, and then 3 years before that, they had gone to the Division II title game. So, yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. There are only 88 girls hockey programs. So we're talking co-ops now. Methuen and Tewksbury, I know they've probably been, at least off the top of my head, the most successful, I think, in the scene. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think more co-ops or fewer co-ops? Which way should we be trending in girls hockey?
We've seen it both ways. You have teams that are combining to form co-ops, like Masconomet combines 5 schools to form their co-op. You have Medway Ashland that combines with Holliston and Millis. They form a 4-school co-op. The Bourne, Mashpee, Wareham, Old Rochester one. But then
You're
you have,
saying that 5 times
I
fast.
know.
Yeah.
But then you have teams like Pembroke who have split off from a co-op, and over the last 5 years they've won 75 games as an independent program, and they've certainly had their fair share of success. They've made the tournament all of those years, and again this year.
Yeah, I think it's a sticking point amongst, particularly on the girls' hockey side, and a little bit on the boys' side, but particularly amongst the girls over the years. Their fear is that sometimes there are co-ops where they don't need to exist. They're afraid that, schools are, the teams are kind of cherry picking which girls to have on the varsity team or whatever, and trying to build these, super teams, if you can call them that. I haven't seen an example of it, but it's a criticism that's definitely out there about the whole co-op system, and I think that, going back to when the co-op thing first started in football back in the 1990s, if the MIAA is very vigilant about sticking to the reason why the co-ops exist, and that's, when you have 2 schools that don't have the numbers to field a valid varsity team on their own to combine, or if you pull in kids from a 3rd or 4th school, but they have to follow the right guidelines. They can't be cutting players. They can't be having a junior varsity team, that kind of stuff. I can see the arguments on both sides, but coming from where I grew up in Central Mass, where my high school didn't have a hockey team back then, it does now, but I'm all for high school kids getting opportunities to play, and if that means that 2 schools have to combine to form a co-op to have a varsity program, I'm all for it. I don't think it's a competitive issue, probably 99% of the time. And especially on the boys hockey side, I'm very adamant against what they did in boys hockey with moving the co-ops up to Division II. I think they've created a much greater imbalance than even existed before. I'm a proponent of having 4 divisions statewide in boys hockey. I think it works in Central and Western Mass. Obviously, you're going to get these people that are, going into the everyone gets a trophy thing, but
You already have Division
but
3A.
realistically, that would be your 4th division.
Right.
That's what I'm looking
Exactly.
at. But realistically, what you're looking at is you're saying that these teams can't compete with the Hanovers and, up until this year, the Shrewsburys and teams like that. Now you start throwing in these programs that have, they might have 14, 15 kids in the entire program if they're lucky. It's and I think, unfortunately, I think you're going to see it. You saw it last year in Division II, and I think you're going to see a little bit more of it in this year. And hopefully, it's something that people kind of take a look at when realignment comes up in 2021.
Well, last year in boys hockey, I think this is a great example. When you had Southeastern, West Bridgewater, Bristol, Plymouth, I believe those are 3 schools in the
Yeah.
co-op. They were the 1 seed in Division II South, and Norwood, they were the 16 seed, and now Southeastern was unbeaten. I think they were 20-0-2, something along those lines. Norwood, Sullivan rule team, 7-8-5, if I'm not mistaken. Chuck Allen will correct me if I'm wrong later. That's the kind of matchup that you don't want to see in the tournament, at least not in the first round, because that's not fair to either team, really.
Yeah, and that wasn't even, obviously you're met from a matchup standpoint, it's a valid point, but obviously that was an overtime game, so it
Also,
actually turned out to be a good
It
game.
really did,
As
yeah.
opposed to some of the other games that you saw in the tournament last year involving co-ops that were, tremendously lopsided. Old Rochester Fairhaven was a Division III team, obviously 2 years ago when they had that great team.
Yep.
They went to the Garden. And then obviously they took a little bit of a step back talent-wise last year, but then moved up to Division II.
Right.
So how does that make a whole lot of sense, So, I'm not one of these pound my fist on the tables anti-MIA people as I, sit in their room and eat their pizza here. But I'm not afraid to kind of, call
Question the
call it
logic.
as it is,
Yeah.
And everyone has their own opinions and their own, logic and reasoning behind stuff, and that's that's my point, and I'm sticking with it.
All right. I got another question for you guys. The statewide tournament works, or that's the format in girls hockey. It's state Division I, state Division II, that's it. No sectionals. What makes that tournament different than the sectional tournaments on the boys' side, and which do you prefer, the sectional or the statewide?
Well, for girls, there's only 7 teams from Central and Western Mass, so that's probably why they're doing it in that way. And you know, a lot of those teams have made it. You got Long Meadow, who's a 7 seed in Division I this year, with a 12-3 record, 11-2 for MIAA seeding purposes, because they played 2 games against Connecticut schools just to fill their schedule.
Right.
But they're still a pretty, you know, formidable opponent that anyone's going to run into. They're going to have to host Brookline. So if you're a Brookline team who's got in as a 26 seed, you got to travel out to Western Mass to play them. I mean, if it works in girls hockey, it might work in boys hockey too, but there also has to be that concern with, I mean, what we've seen over the last few years, not just in hockey, but in all sports, where once you get to that final round, how often do you see Central and Western teams actually coming out and winning it?
It's rare.
I think the concern they had in girls hockey, and I actually took a look at this last week when I wrote my proposal on how this whole thing can blow up and start over again, but it's actually something I've heard tournament officials talk about over the years, is that if you actually took a look at, if, say, for example, even if you wanted to split girls hockey along north and south lines, I think they're afraid that they would be too imbalanced from one region to another. I think if you really look at it and think about it logically, probably if you looked at Division I, the strength of Division I would be predominantly in the north, whereas in Division II would probably be predominantly in the south. And I think that that was one of their biggest concerns. And obviously, you know, then you start to get into, you know, administrators worry about, you know, sending kids out to play, you know, down at Dennis Yarmouth at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night or something like that. You know, so you get that aspect of it. But I think from a competitive standpoint, trying to split it into two, even to go north-south in girls hockey, on the surface, numbers-wise might work, but you know, from that competitive aspect, I think it would be a little bit more imbalanced than people would like.
Sure. I'm going to call Joey McDermott in from the bullpen here. Just real quick, I have to head to a call. We'll start to mix things up, so I'll be back momentarily here. But Joey, just continue our girls hockey conversation here. We're also here from Brendan Connolly coming up of WATD and the Boston Herald, and Brandon Hull still lurking out there as well. So, you know, Jim, I'm going to leave you with one final question. How's UMass going to end up in men's college hockey?
Why do you think I care about UMass?
Yeah, you got it.
No, Will Ortiz told me I had to wear this or else I couldn't sit next to him today. Obviously, Will was on the only UMass team that made the NCAA tournament back in 07. I think he actually had the assist on Kevin Jarman's overtime goal when they beat Clarkson in the first round of the tournament. But this year, I think everyone's really kind of surprised by how well this team is doing. They were picked 6th in Hockey East. I think if you would have asked pretty much anybody, realistically, they probably would have said they could fight for home ice, top 3 or 4. This is kind of blowing everybody away with what they've done in there. You know, Cale McCarr, everyone knows who he is. He's obviously you know, probably heading off to Colorado after the season, but you know, it's a well-rounded team. You get a kid like John Leonard that played in the Super 8 tournament for Springfield Cathedral, who's, you know, contributed 10 to 12 goals this year, and they've been a lot of fun to watch. It's looking like they're probably going to be the Hockey East regular season champs, but who knows what happens when you get to the tournament. So, but it certainly beats 5-29 where we were 2 years ago.
It's so incredible how quickly that thing has turned around, and if the URI administration is watching,
I knew this was coming.
I know you are. It can be done.
This was a setup, wasn't it?
It can be done. Jim, thank you, and we'll call the bullpen here. Dan, thank you.
I'm actually going to head on myself. So.
All right, so we're going to shuffle the chairs here and let the Brandon and Brendan show take over. Dan, feel free to stay on with them. All right, sure.
Take this.
All right, boys. All right, stuff as usual.
All right. So what did I miss?
Just some spirited girls hockey talk.
So they've released the Division II and Division III South brackets. Did you guys get into that by any chance?
No, I was just strictly with the girls.
Just strictly with the girls? Okay.
That went fast and furious, I can tell you that. It was a 4-way tie in Division II, and it actually ended up determining 2 buys. which Bishop Stang and Notre Dame Hingham ended up winning in the random draw. So
Okay.
they got the 6 and 7 seeds respectively, and then it actually hurts Pembroke, who beat Notre Dame in regular season play and ended up having a seated below them. They'll play in the first round against Cambridge. That should be a pretty easy win for Pembroke.
Yeah, Pembroke's got 200-point scorers this year.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Carly Birolini, Nikki Rinkus, both of them have been with the program since their freshman year.
Right.
Now, that's
Both great kids I had in class.
Yeah, that's a great program. That's a great story, and we were actually mentioned it when Jake was on just a moment ago that they actually went independent and broke away from a co-op that they had formed for the last 5 years now. They've won over 70 games. They are a perennial tournament team. You felt at one point this year they might be able to go the distance, run the table, but over the last few games they dropped a few contests. Not playing the same hockey they were at the start of the year.
Correct.
They're a young team. They got freshman
Because
goalies that they
both
roll out and they
brackets
alternate.
could
So
change
we'll see
significantly.
what happens by the tournament.
We actually got Coach Flynn who just walked in here talking about your girls right now.
Oh, good.
But yeah, they've had a great run. 70 wins in the last 4 years, as you said.
Yeah, not bad.
So things have been good there. And move on to boys Division 2 here as we bring Brendan Connolly in. Obviously, the number 1 seed is the Canton boys.
Yeah.
There's no surprise there.
I think that was the main question a lot.
Hey Scott, when's the
writers and a lot of fans
play-ins
for
on
Canton
Monday?
was-
Times?
Were the Bulldogs ready to
But who?
make the Super 8
Which
field?
Duxbury's first?
Duxbury's
Finishing
first?
without a loss in the
Duxbury
season was
and
pretty
Superior
impressive,
at
but
5.
they recently had a tie, as we all
Marshall,
know,
St.
and
Mary's is the
I don't know if that was
Craig,
the
it's
main factor
very
that
Duxbury
they
first.
didn't make the field eventually, but it certainly
Yep,
played
and
somewhat.
followed by St. Mary's Marshall.
Yeah, so as the top seeds in each bracket, we've got Canton as the top seed,
And you looking for,
overall
give or
top
take,
seed, and then
300 words on
in the
each?
lower bracket, Quincy at the number 4 rank, Southeastern Regional at the number 2 rank, and Westwood at the number 3 rank. All 4 of those teams will get initial buys going into the first round.
Okay.
Canton will be waiting for the winner of Dedham versus Medway. Southeastern will be waiting for the winner of Sandwich versus Brookline. Westwood will be waiting for Whitman Hanson, who also gets a bye, and then Quincy will be playing North Attleboro. Some intriguing matchups there. We get some good South Shore action that we like, of course.
Of course, we always like a little South Shore action. After all, it is one of the hockey hotbeds of this state, as I always say. Team, as you just mentioned, that has impressed me this year was Quincy. Started off wicked hot. Their experience has really carried them to their 15 wins. I could see them making a run. They would get the winner of Norwood versus Scituate. Norwood obviously having a very good season as well with 11 wins. Scituate, it's been a tale of 3 different portions of the season, 3 chapters. The Scituate, they come out of the gate under a new coach, Brian Hercom, as we talked about earlier in the year, and they won, I believe, 6 out of their first 8 games or so, but then they went into a tailspin, won 7-2 over the next bunch, and they ended the year strong. A couple wins in a row before falling in the Gould Memorial Final to Hanover. So the thing about Scituate is they're seasoned. They played in a tough Patriot League, but I could see Quincy coming out of that end of the bracket, beating them.
Yeah, it's got a strong Patriot League contingent in this Division II South bracket. You've got Plymouth North, you've got Quincy, you've got Scituate, as we said, Whitman Hanson earlier, and then any one of those teams could make a run, as you said. I look at, in looking at this bracket, Canton almost has the toughest road of all of them. Canton has got to play Dedham or Medway, and if things go chalk, right, then they've got to play either Plymouth North or Oliver Ames. 2 really strong programs.
So much for winning it or earning an easy route to the final, I
Right.
should say. Even as the top seed, as you just mentioned, it's going to be a tough road for them. I still expect them to come out of that portion of the bracket. I would not be surprised to see Canton winning the South Final in this region,
Yeah.
just based on how they performed against top tier teams. Even when they went down a division to play D3 programs, they played Hanover, top level team for that league. So no matter which way you slice it, I think Canton's the favorite. Still have to wait and see because you got to play the game anyway.
Right. And Canton did only lose 1 point out of a possible 40, I think it was, points that they could have gained this season. They only lost 1. They got 39 of a possible 40 with a tie against Boston Latin in the Joe Quinn Memorial Tournament. So, yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I think Canton is the favorite here in this bracket. Although there is a team in the bottom, Westwood, who has some experience as a
13 1 and
program.
6 as well. So whoever if somebody's going to challenge them on that end, I think Whitman Hanson could give them a fight. Whitman Hanson has kind of gone up and down over the course of the year, but when they've gone up against a tough team, they've usually found a way to compete.
Right.
So
2-1 against Duxbury, 1-0
Exactly.
against Duxbury. Both losses, but both close games. Duxbury's a Super 8 team.
It's just like Scituate. That's life in the Patriot League. You get such competition on a consistent basis. Teams that have played each other consistently multiple times throughout the year, that by the time they get to this level, a lot of times they'll be in the middle of the pack, but they find a way to get rolling at the right time. And that's just because of how their competition is fared over the season.
Right, and we've got some TVL teams that are in this bracket as well, like Medfield, like Westwood, and I believe Norwood is in the TVL now too. Is that correct? I've learned that from Jake Levin and his
I
work
believe
covering the
so.
Norwood with the Norwood record.
A little bit
But
of shuffling from that Bay State conference, but it did some wonders for them because going into a conference like the Tri-County, it makes things a little easier, I should say, because then you don't have to play the likes of Framingham, you don't have to play Braintree, both teams that have wins on their schedule that come against Super 8 competition.
right, yeah, we always when I was at Silver Lake, we looked at some of those Tri-Valley teams and thought, how is there a league that's tougher than the Patriot League? We go in and game out and having a battle for every single point, and then go into the tournament and have to face Dover Sherborne or Medway or Medfield or someone like that would say, I mean, can we catch a break here at some point?
In D2, you would think, since it's obviously not D1, that these teams might be a little, easier to overcome. No, they're just so used to playing some of the toughest teams out there, and that's the end result. These teams always surprise you when they get here. You never really know who the dark horse is going to be. Any one of these teams could sneak up, but I'm just going to keep reaffirming this over and over. Canton is still my favorite.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, well, the one concern that you see from a lot of these top teams, Southeastern Regional comes to mind, and so does Wareham at the 6th seed. They don't play exactly the toughest schedules in the regular season. So, I mean, while they have that great record, can they compete against these non-league opponents who have played tougher schedules and really strong teams, sometimes predominantly D1 schedules? I mean, Southeastern, who plays a lot of D3 teams on their schedule. Wareham's an interesting team, though. You have a very prolific scorer in Corino DeCanto, who has just been so consistent all season long. And if they can get out of that first round against Bishop Fee, and you start to get a little more confident if you're a Wareham team, and you might be able to give the Westwood Whitman Hanson winner a strong game.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right about Southeastern. They've been a top seed now a couple of years, coming in with 16-plus wins, and despite the fact that the competition that they're playing against might not necessarily be at the level of the Division II South. It remains to be seen how this runs itself out. They're going to have to play the winner of Sandwich versus Brookline. And as we take a look at the boys Division 3 in the South, Hanover, of course, is the number 1 seed overall, and they get their bye. And then we have preliminary games of Nantucket versus Attleboro, Foxborough versus Mashpee, Dartmouth versus Silver Lake, Diamond versus St. John Paul II, and Rockland versus a Hull Middleborough co-op team. So some intriguing smaller matchups there, in particular the Rockland-Hull matchup for me, for my money.
This is going to sound kind of cliche, but I like Bourne. You're a top seed, you're a top 4 seed, and you got that entire bracket where you're going to have home games, and you go to the semifinals and finals. If those are hosted at Gallo, you're playing on your home ice. You know the dimensions, you know the bounces.
No question.
So regardless of who you play, even if you don't have the last change, you still have the home crowd behind you because it's your home rink. So it's interesting. We'll see what Bourne can do, but Hanover's a very tough team, as is Norwell.
Yeah. Bourne will be the home team in the home rink for the duration of that tournament up until you would imagine the semifinals, because they will be the highest seed and they'll be playing at their home rink, like you said. It's a great point.
I mean, shocker, a Globe and Herald guy getting along on something here. I mean, you got to see. I kind of agree with him. Like, you look at Bourne. I like Bourne as a dark horse this tournament. I know they're the 4th seed, but whenever you're in a field with Hanover, it's going to be tough to come out on the other side. But on that end of things, I think Bourne could definitely make a run to the semifinals, and my ultimate projection is Hanover coming out of here. And I know they're the top seed, but it's just because they've played Super 8 competition all season long. They defeated Duxbury, which was a surprise to me. They held tough with some of the other ones. They obviously played in the Patriot League throughout the course of the season. So I think Hanover is poised to make another run in the Garden. Will they?
With us today, Joey McDermott over at Bridgewater.
Yep. Very excited to be a part
college,
of this.
Joey. I'm an old school social guy.
That's all right.
But exciting day. Glad first time for you to be a part of this. But you were in the room for the Super 8 selections, and we've been making the rounds on some of the other divisions. But Super 8 certainly always exciting for the 1A selections, and no real surprises, although certainly this year that 10th seed, if you want to call it that, during the selection process is always a little murky, always up in the air. We had some interesting teams like Canton and things like that from D2 that were represented this year. So why don't you give your take on it? I'm proud to say that MyHockeyLive actually had all 10 teams in our top 10 this year. So on our RPI, so if you go to our rankings page for boys D1, you're going to see that the MyHockeyLive RPI pretty much nailed it, the top 10 teams. So.
Yeah, my take on it, the only team I probably would have switched out maybe was Canton or Marshfield, but Marshfield does their due diligence by playing a tough schedule, and they get the benefit of it by getting into the Super 8 tournament. And I guess when you want to play the toughest teams, you're going to lose a few, but that gives you a better shot towards the end of the year, whether it's in the state tournament or in the Super 8 tournament.
Yeah, sure, and Coach Dan Conley hopefully will join us here a little bit later and talk a little bit about his season and certainly his final stretch there, as you and I were talking about. That win over Severian probably, really helped him kind of seal that 10 seed, and then as they set this up, and we'll talk more about it, the play-in games for Monday night. MyHockeyLive will be there, live streaming both play-in games, and the way that sets up, it's going to be Duxbury against Severian in the first game, which is going to go off at 6 o'clock, 5:30.
The second game is 7.
Yeah, and the second game is 7. So again, that will be Duxbury versus Severian. Duxbury coming in with the highest, coming in as the 7th seed with the highest winning percentage. So when they do 7 through 10, that's how they shake those out, is with the winning percentage. So Duxbury had the highest winning percentage. Severian had the lowest winning percentage. So it'll be Duxbury against Severian at 5 o'clock. And then you'll have St. Mary's of Lynn against Marshfield at 7 o'clock is game 2. And again, MyHockeyLive will be there for both of those games. Real excited to begin our coverage. All of those games will be found on our channel on the NFHS network. So it's a little bit different. But when you go to the website, you'll see when you hit the watch channel, you'll see a big note telling you that all MIAA tournament games will be viewed on our NFHS channel, which is nfhsnetwork.com affiliates MyHockeyLive MHL. So you'll see those notations up on the MHL website, but all the brackets, all the rankings, all the scores, everything else, all the archived videos will still be found on myhockeylive.com. So looking forward to the start of that. So Joey, you got your 4 teams there. You've got your 2 games. So how do you think those shake out?
Duxbury is going to be a good game. They play in the regular season. I believe Duxbury edged them. St. Mary's and Marshfield would be very interesting, because I wouldn't have picked those 2 teams to be playing each other at this point in the season, and such a big game. But I think they'll both be close games.
Yeah, and speaking of great playing games, we're going to have Coach John Missouri join us here as he walks into the room. We're going to try to grab some time with him, because I know John's getting ready for an alumni game or something in Arlington.
Yeah.
And Coach Missouri, thank you so much for coming on. Always good to see you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
And,
Joey McDermott, nice to see you.
here. And Coach, we were just talking about the thrill of the playing games. They're typically the best games of the tournament, you know, and the matchups couldn't be any better for this year, with Severian and Duxbury going off in the first game, and then St. Mary's and Marshfield in the second game. I think you played at least 2, if not 3 of those teams, right, this year?
We played Marshfield.
Did you play St. Mary's?
No, we didn't play St. Mary's
No,
or
okay.
Severian this year.
Okay.
But the playing games are always great, because
Yeah.
you got nothing to lose.
Right.
So you just go.
Yeah.
You just unload the cannons and see what happens.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Spy Ponders. Again, top 4 team here. So exciting finish to the season for you. You guys play a tough schedule, as does Hingham, who was right in front of you. So talk a little bit about the season and what you think took place here this morning.
Yeah, we were bumpy in December. We had 2 of our key players coming off of injuries, And then when they get back in the lineup, we kind of started to get healthy. Then we lost 2 more guys right away in January, and then by the end of January, we had everybody back. And we have everybody back. We got a lot of deep forwards, and our goaltending's been very good, and our D have been super steady. So, you know, we have an idea what it takes in this tournament.
Yeah.
So we know what we're looking for.
Talk about I mean, obviously, you know, public high school, you know, we got 4 publics in there with Framingham as well, and, you know, it's always exciting, but it's always a challenge, you know, coming off of such a great year last year, and, you know, not only keep, you know, them coming up from the system, the feeder type system, but also keeping them focused.
Right. Yeah, no, this time of the year, I mean, we ended our season on Monday, and our practices this week have been brutal. Like, we've really hammered them this week in practice, so I think they're gonna be really hoping this hurry up and gets to a game because the practice have not been good, but, no, we have a really exciting matchup. From the looks of it, I think it could be the only 2 public schools playing, so that should make for a really good atmosphere in that game.
Yeah.
You know, so it's exciting to play another public, and I've seen Framingham live, and they're really good, so it'll be a hard game.
We've had the privilege of covering Framingham a few times. We've had the privilege of covering you guys a few times, so we're clearly excited about that. That should be a great matchup. Well-coached teams, very disciplined, strong on the defensive side both ways. So, they've been able to find the back of the net. Joe, I didn't know if you had a couple of questions for Coach.
Yeah, actually, when you're looking at like who's right above you, right below you in the standings, how much do you look into those teams and say, well, we might be a little better than them, we might be below them when it comes to a selection like this where it's not off win percentage?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything, when you're talking to the kids, you gotta think you're better than everybody, right? So, you know, you gotta think you can beat everybody and be better than everybody, and I think the goal is just to get in and then go to work.
Yep. Anything could happen definitely in a tournament like that.
Yeah, we weren't the 1 seed 2 years ago.
No.
That's right. That's right. And it's a good reminder too,
Yeah.
because you know, and the format has switched a couple of times over the years. But which do you prefer? I mean, do you like the current format or the way things were done way back when? Or
I've been through so many formats. I've been through the double elimination. I've been through pool play. I've been through now this new double elimination with a single elimination at the end. I'm not a big fan of the single elimination at the end. I think it's unfair to the winners bracket team.
mm-hmm.
You know, I'd rather see the tournament a little screwed up in the beginning than the end. You know, so somehow or other, you know, we are always talking as coaches. What I'd like to see is the old tournament was 70%, right, before the Super 8. If you had 70%, you get in. I think teams with 70% should just go play in the 1A tournament, and teams between 50 and 69 should play in the Division I tournament. And that would take a little bit of the Survivor element out of it, you know, the show Survivor, where everybody's trying to figure out who's going to be on the island. So, so I think if you just, you know, did that, and you look at the 70% this year, you'd have 12 or 13 teams in a single elimination tournament with just about everybody on that board.
Right.
So, that would be my suggestion, because they're still looking for that format that works perfectly for them. And yeah, if you look here, I mean, look down the list. I mean, it would be interesting if you sort it by winning percentage.
Yeah, we had it by RPI, and I was saying at the top of the broadcast here that we actually had the top 10 exact.
Yeah.
Right, exactly right. And then you know, if you did it by, you know, win percentage after that, you know, it's not going to shake that up much differently, other than you've got a Melrose, as you said, and a Barnstable or
Yeah,
something
let them
like
play
that.
single elimination, put them in.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But it's tough, right? So like last year, if BC High had lost that game, they were 53 seconds away from losing that game. You know, they would have beaten Pope Francis twice during the year, and it pounded them in the opening round.
Right.
And they wouldn't have been the champ. So it's tricky, right? So, but look, here's what we all know. The rules are set. Everybody's agreed to play. These are the rules, you know, and so this is how the tournament champions decided. So let's go try and figure out who the champ is.
Yeah.
How excited are the kids for a tournament like this?
Yeah, they get jacked up. I mean, you try to get them not to follow it, and
But they will.
it just doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? And you know, and it's along the debate of should there be a Super 8 or shouldn't there, and that goes back and forth. But I think it creates a lot of interest in high school hockey that we need right now, right? So if you didn't have it, you wouldn't have all this media and flair and all these you know, news stories on it, which is great. But the kids are excited. It's, you know, you feel like you've accomplished something, and now you know, now you get to play in the big stage and see what happens. So,
Your roster's a pretty good blend. You've got a couple of freshmen on there, but then you've got a good mix of juniors and seniors. Who are the ones that, I know you're getting healthy too, as you mentioned at
Yeah.
the top here. So, you know, who are some of the names everybody should be keen on once the tournament gets started?
I mean, you know, goaltending will be critical between Brennan and Perkel. I mean, that's where it starts, right? You know, and then you go to the back end with Simon and Davies and Leosa, and we're going to put Callahan back on defense, even though, you know, he's one of our top scorers.
Sure.
So it's going to start there, and then look at our forwards. I mean, I got 5 or 6 college forwards. Going to play college hockey.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting looked at by
Which is
college
great.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Missouri kid's pretty good too.
Missouri kid's pretty good. He's had a good year. He started a little slow, but the second half of the year he's picked it up and had a good season. And he does a lot of little things for us: block shots, winning face-offs. You know, so he's a good player. And the Keneally kid kind of sets the tone for us physically, and he's a good player. And he was one of the kids. He was coming off a very weird stress fracture in the groin,
Wow.
and that really, you know, that really slowed him down for a good part of the year, and now lately he's kind of been like all downhill. You know, Malatesta's had a good season. Jennings, you know, I mean, he's a 3-time Catholic Conference All-Star. Well, you know, he transferred over to us his senior year, so to pick up a 20-goal scorer under that roster, you know, and then he's another one. Like, he was trying to figure this all out. Like, you know, I teased him in practice yesterday. I said to him, I says, Will, now we're going to put in this little wrinkle here, and we don't have 65 days for you to get it like it took you during the regular season. So, good kid. He's going to play college hockey.
Yeah.
So, you know, we got forwards that can go. But the question is, it's one game. We're not playing them in a series. It's one game, so
Right.
anything can happen.
Anything can happen, especially with the talent that's out there.
Yeah.
And the talent between
Yeah,
the pipes.
no,
So-
and it's a fun game. Like
Yeah.
you talk about my guy, him and Terrasoni played together all summer, played
Yeah.
together in the festival. And,
Yeah.
Terrasoni's a tremendous player
Yeah.
for Framingham.
His mother's a big follower of MyHockeyLive. I'm sure
Yeah.
she's tuned in right
Yeah,
now,
he's-
actually. So Michael's had quite a season.
He can play.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
can really play.
yeah. They'll be ready, as I'm sure the
Yeah.
Spy Hunters will be as
Yeah.
well. So we appreciate you taking time. We know
Yeah.
you've got to get off to the
I
alumni.
got to stretch for a couple hours.
Doesn't get easy as we get older, does it?
Yeah,
Jeff?
all right.
Good seeing you,
stuff,
Coach.
guys.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much for joining us.
Yep, thanks,
And,
guys. We'll see you up at
we'll
Saugus.
see you up at Saugus next weekend, and
Thanks.
excited, Joey, for the tournament to get started.
Oh, yeah.
We did learn a little bit today that we'll share with some of the others. Mike Sheehan, who will hopefully join us here at some point, is now overseeing the girls' side of both Division I and II. So they've got games now, 8 games at Watertown, 6 games at Warrior, 6 games at Woburn, and then 6 games over at the Ice House in Canton. And the boys will be playing over there as well. But the Ice House in Canton now under Tom McDonald over there, so we're going to give Tom a shout out. Tom, big follower of MyHockeyLive, was with Sacred Heart a few years ago, and really helped MyHockeyLive get kick-started into some of the other divisions. And Tom now over at the Ice House in Canton, and we'll be over there not only with coverage through MyHockeyLive and the NFHS TV network, but also we manage the program sales as well, Joey. So we wear many hats here.
Yep.
But, and you've done some nice writing for us this year. So
Thank you.
why don't you talk about your experience with MyHockeyLive and doing those weekly updates?
Oh, it's honestly been awesome. I love covering hockey, looking at all the ins and outs of it, who's good, who's playing well at the right time. Gave me a platform to start to expand my knowledge in writing, and I'm happy that I can move forward with this on my resume.
It's great, and we appreciated your reaching out to us. So we're always looking for interns. We have Max up at UMass Amherst as well, and it's a great way for you guys to kind of get your feet wet and get an understanding of how all of this works, but also gives us some young, aspiring, talented kids that are looking to make their way through school, which is always great. And we're going to have the fabulous Jake Levin join us here in Brandon Hall. So, Brandon, if you want to climb in, we just had Coach Missouri on, which was terrific. Again, happy to announce that MyHockeyLive had the exact 10 teams, as Jake nods. Again, our MyHockeyLive RPI available up on the website. For those of you that are just joining us, we'll be bringing the 2 games live on Monday night. Game number 1 will go off at 5 p.m. That'll be Duxbury against Severian. Game number 2 will be at 7 p.m. St. Mary's Lane against Marshfield. So again, My Hockey Live will be there. Jake and Paul McNamara, I think, are both going to be in the building for that one with fabulous Pat Serio, our production guy, and I'm sure we'll have more updates on the website in regards to the full schedule. We do have 4 production crews now, so through the NFHS network we'll be covering not only the 1A games, but of course we'll have all of the games down at Gallo. And a shout out to John Hickey down there, who sets us up nicely there. We'll be up at Woburn, Tom Quayle up there helping us out, and then of course we'll be at Chelmsford and Songus, and then now also over at Warrior and the Ice House. So excited to have games being played there. We do regular season games regularly at both Warrior and the Ice House. We were at the Warrior Arena last night with their Academy game, which we covered, and both boys and girls game, and we have the good fortune of Brandon Hall, actually his wife, working it there, so I think he was in the house. I assume you're not invoicing us for that one. No, just,
We'll see about that, right?
but there's St. Sebastian's last night. That was quite a game that you got to call there, and just an exciting day for high school hockey. I know obviously you've been part of this for a number of years, and part of the MyHockeyLive team now for a couple of years as well. But what did you think of what you've seen so far in regards to the 10 teams that have been selected to the 1A, and then other things that you're hearing? Obviously, a little Plymouth South slant never goes wrong here with the big championship for them last year. But when you talk about your sentiment on what's happened so far?
Yeah, we saw down at Buddy Ferreira, as we were watching the end of that tournament, we saw some things there from BC High. They looked really strong against Hingham in that championship game, and Hingham came out at the beginning of that game so strong, very physical, very tough to play against. They kind of punched BC High in the mouth, and I think it took BC High by surprise a bit. And that first period showed me, Hingham's the real deal. They can get in there and they can compete. If they can put 3 periods together like that, they're going to go a while in the tournament. Looking at some of the other teams, obviously BC High's been at the top throughout the season. Their only loss to Framingham in Massachusetts, and then the one to a private school outside of the state. But BC High looks strong. Having seen Duxbury and Marshfield both play together at the Green Cup on MHL, Duxbury was a 1-0 game with, say, a minute and a half to go in that one, and ends up being a 3-0 final. Duxbury pops in 2 in the empty net. Marshfield and Duxbury will be fun to watch in that prelim. And having seen a lot of Zavarian over the years, the last couple of years, they've got some kids that have some real experience that will do them well.
Yeah, that's such a tough schedule for Coach Spinelli and it is Zavarian players there, and we, as I said, we have Coach Missouri on from Arlington, who's got an incredibly deep roster, hugely strong at the end. We had the Newburyport Classic also on the past couple of nights, and what a strong finish for them over Andover. Probably sealed the fate for both teams right there. So I think between the Ferrara Classic, the Newburyport Classic up there, and things really shook out, and of course Marshfield got just red hot at the end, and they'd actually fallen off the watch list, I think, week 2, which, we'll talk to Coach Conley about that when he comes in here. Some thought it might have been a ploy to get his boys riled up a little bit, and they responded as such. But yeah, we've had the good fortune from MyHockeyLive to see a lot of these teams. But what do you think of Marshfield? Obviously they'll play St. Mary's, another tough team who plays a very tough schedule, so it should be an interesting matchup there.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to get 2 really great matchups in that first round. To see Duxbury and Zavarian, and then St. Mary's and Marshfield. I mean, that Zavarian team, we watched them a lot last year. We did, I think, 10 games this year of theirs. You've got Josh Barton, who's been there, it seems like forever now, 37 points this year. And you just go down the list. Robbie Barletta, who's played really well for them as a sophomore at 15 points. Matty Ryan is only a junior. I feel like we've been saying his name for 15 years at this point. He had 33 points. And then Pompaselli, who's also a junior, had 27 points this year. Pompaselli has been on that team forever, and so is Matty Ryan, and these guys finally get a chance to play in the Super 8 after not even making the tournament last year. So that initial game, Duxbury versus Xaverian, should be outstanding. And then St. Mary's, I haven't seen St. Mary's, but if memory serves, Marshfield is strong in net. They're strong in the back end. It's going to be a battle there too.
Yeah. And then Arlington's, they're going to face Framingham, and Coach Missouri was on here talking about how his son is really good friends with Tersoni, who's been just red hot. I mean, if there was an MHL live player of the year, it's probably Tersoni. He lights it up every time we cover their games. And so, what do you think of Joey, the Framingham matchup there, and obviously Tersoni is senior this year, but some good depth there, a good mix of.
I personally love that matchup as a public school kid.
Yeah.
You want to see all the public schools in the Super 8, and you know that both teams are going to bring a lot of fans, and that's going to be a heavy hitting game. The way Framingham's played, they'll play some of the weakest teams on their schedule to a 2-1 game, but then they beat BC High 2-1, and that just shows you they're a playoff team that's going to play tough against whoever they're going to play against. But Arlington, like the coach said, they're getting healthy, and that can prove to be the best thing for a team, getting fresh guys into the lineup, juicing it up a little bit, bringing some fresh faces in. So I think that's going to be a real close game.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the archive games for Framingham. We cover a lot of their games, and they beat Xaverian 6-4. They lost to Hingham 2-1. They beat BC High 2-1. Beat St. John's Shrewsbury, who was a very strong team this year, 3-2, and then tied Marshfield back on December 27th, 1-1. So, very strong schedule for Framingham. I don't think there's any teams in the field here that didn't play a strong schedule. I don't know, Brandon, if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of taking a look at Arlington's results right now. The 1-1 tie against Pope Francis stands out to me. There's some big wins. 7-2 over Wakefield, 5-2 over Woburn. The 6-3 loss to Burlington, I understand, but then the 9-3 win over Andover at the end of the season, that kind of catapults them into that spot. I don't think there was really any doubt about Arlington, given what they've done all season, 14-3-3 overall. With what John Missouri has done with that group over the years, they're almost like the North Shore version of Marshfield. In some ways, and there were some years where Arlington would come down to Hobomok to play Marshfield, and we'd have the good fortune of being on after them or before them and see those two teams battle it out. It's a different level with those guys.
Yeah, and then you look at Marshfield, and we had them 5 times this year. So again, a lot of these teams that are playing in the field of the Super 8, I've been on MyHockeyLive multiple times this year, so we've been able to see them a few times, and Marshfield, Duxbury in the Green Cup, as you mentioned, Duxbury beating them 3-0, and then Framingham and Marshfield's getting to a 1-1 tie during the MHL Cup, losing to Xaverian, as you said, Joey, 2-1 back towards the end of December as well in the MHL Cup. So, just another tough schedule. The public, as you said, which so we've got depending on how the Marshfield and Duxbury games go. You've got at least 3 and potentially 5, which, if my memory serves me well, which is usually not a good thing. My memory doesn't serve well, but usually it seems like it's been 3 or 4. So if 5 ended up in the field of 8, that would be pretty impressive for the public schools. And I like to see Coach Missouri, and he's always been great to us, and nice to have him on. But he really spoke about how they were getting healthy and what it's like to come off a year that they had, the past couple of years, as you said, becoming that Marshfield of getting their, or Hingham, regularly into this field, and we should probably talk a little bit about Hingham. I know you mentioned them, but in regards to what we saw down at the Buddy Pereira Classic, probably nobody that plays a more difficult schedule than Coach Messina and the Hingham Harbormen, Joey. Always, a tough schedule, tough road, but, you know, they know what it takes to get here, I guess. And then once they do, they're battle tested.
Yeah, definitely. I got to see them in the first round of the Buddy Fiera. They were playing Arlington Catholic. They remind me a lot of Framingham, a team that's big and they know how to win games and they're going to play to win games. They're not going to play to, you know, rack up a bunch of goals, but they're going to compete with everyone that they play against, like they competed against BC High, the now #1 seed in the Super 8. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see if they can make their way through the field and end up meeting up with BC High at the end like they did in the Buddy Fiera. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, and you look at Hingham as far as their players are concerned. Jake Higgins is as good a defenseman as we've seen all season, in 31 points. 24 of those are assists. We saw him in the championship game at Buddy Ferreira. You know, when he gets the puck, he knows exactly what he's going to do with it. He's got great vision, heads up, good footwork, good skill. You know, we talked to him at the beginning of the season at the Garrett Regan. Yeah, you know, we interviewed him at the Garrett Regan. Such a well-spoken young man. You could see this, and I said this during the broadcast, but you watch the kids on that Hingham team. They all crowded around as we interviewed him, and there's a mutual respect there for him as a hockey player and as a leader. And then we also had, at the same time, we had Will Kenny on, and just such a smooth skating forward. Hit 35 points this season. 24 of them were assists. He can pass the puck really well, sets up his teammates. He wears 37 like Patrice Bergeron, and I don't think that's a bad comparison.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think Coach was very happy to see Aaron Richardson, the senior goaltender, step up and perform so well. So, you know, they're going to be, you know, they're #3 seed for a reason. They play a tough schedule. You know, during the regular season on MyHockeyLive, they were 5-0-1, so I think we got to take a little credit for that, Jake. You know, Coach Messina, when he sees you next, you know, should certainly get you a cup of coffee. But you know, two of the teams are going to drop back into the D1. So let's talk a little bit about the D1. You know, Duxbury's Severian, the loser of that, obviously drops down to the D1 South. St. Mary's Marshfield. St. Mary's will go to D1 North. Marshfield will go to D1 South if they should lose. So, you know, just looking at the North, I mean, you've already got Burlington, you've already got Winchester, you've already got Melrose. You know, you could add a St. Mary's into that mix. You know, the D1 tournaments, I always enjoy them. I just think they're stacked. They're usually stacked.
Yeah.
You know, and there's always an upset. I mean, there's always an upset in those first or second rounds. You know, that kind of shake it up a little bit, and teams can get on a run, as we've seen with hot goaltenders over the years. But you know, let's talk a little bit about D1 North and D1 South. I know we don't get to see a lot of the North teams. Andover, I left them off. Now I left them off. Coach Cooch in the meeting today, and you know, certainly being considered for the Super 8. And Andover, you know, beat Hingham. So you know, there's some talent up there on the North Shore as well as the South Shore. But talk a little bit about you know, D1 North, Joey, what you know there.
A team that I actually really like is Melrose.
Yeah.
They last undefeated D1 team in the state. I mean, they had 5 ties at that point, but that just shows that they're competing in all their games, and I think they're going to be one of the toughest outs in that D1 North. Andover was kind of sliding at the end of the year. I think Arlington beat them 9-3 or something in their last game, but they were still talked about heavily in that D1A selection. So I mean, they're going to be one of the favorites. I believe, were they in the Division 1A last season?
They were.
Yes. So they got experience up there, and you know, experience plays well in those big moments. Another team like Burlington. Burlington was talked about a lot today, and there's definitely a couple powerhouses in that tournament.
Yeah. And then you look at the middle of the pack, you got a St. John's Prep sitting there, right? It's like, okay, you know, I mean, that's why these upsets take place, right? Is you've got a team, just look at the St. John's Prep, you know, their winning percentage is .575, so, you know, they're not going to be a top 4 team in that bracket, yet talent-wise, they probably are, right? So, you know, that's going to be interesting, especially if, you know, if St. Mary's should drop back down in there, you know, boy, I tell you, what a bracket that'll be.
Yeah, and you think about teams we haven't even mentioned yet: Winchester, Andover, Reading, you know, and Burlington, right? And these are teams that have, you know, 600 winning percentages in difficult leagues. That is going to be a fun tournament.
Yeah.
It's going to be, you know, it's anybody's guess who comes out of that group.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Another team, Bill Rucka. I mean, you know, they were on that watch list for a couple of weeks and fell off a little bit at the end. But you know, again, anything can happen in the playoffs here as the state finals progress. And then, moving down to 1 South, again, we know that either a Duxbury or Severian is going to obviously drop down, and then, potentially Marshfield if they were to lose. But, you've got, teams, like Mansfield, Needham, Falmouth, Walpole, Braintree, winning percentage is .675, and Coach Fasano has had that team knocking on the door many times over the last couple of years. They're battle tested, good deep roster. Then you look at the middle of the pack and you got a Catholic Memorial there,
Right.
sit in the middle, right? Like, okay, how do they, 625 winning percentage? So
Or how would you like to have to go down to Gallo as the neutral site, quote unquote, and play Barnstable or Falmouth?
I would
Right.
not want to play Barnstable in any
Absolutely not.
circumstance.
Absolutely not.
yeah.
And Mansfield's had one of the top winning percentages ever since the start of the season, so they're a danger team up top too. And I wouldn't want to play a Catholic Memorial or Severian though if I'm them, because those teams are battle tested through the regular season.
And you get a team like Wellesley. Wellesley's been so good this season that at any point, Wellesley could jump right out as one of those bottom seeds and pitch an upset.
Yeah, that D1 South is definitely stacked. There are going to be, the Catholics like CM, of course. Potentially a Severian gets dropped back down in there too, and even Archie's, who is going to get in there and played recently down at the Buddy Ferrer Classic, so we got to see a lot of teams there. So we are going to have the good fortune of Coach Flaherty from Boston College High School joining us, the number 1 seed BC High Eagles, and Coach, we appreciate you making some time for us as always, and certainly a big congratulations to you and the boys, because obviously quite a run last year, and here you are, sitting in the 1 seat again this year. I know that sometimes it feels good, sometimes it doesn't as a coach, I guess. But
It's exciting. It's exciting for the boys. And again, for this year, it's a new year. The body of work was there, that the committee recognized that our guys played well, and they deserve to be seated where they were. So we're happy with that, and we're proud of our guys for the effort they put forth. Having graduated 9 seniors from last year's team, the fact that the group of guys that we have done what they've done and put us in this position, we're proud of them.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, as you've told us many times before, and always a strong field. I mean, you get there, and it's it's great to be recognized for that. But you know what you're up against. I mean, you've been here before. You know what that field looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking a little bit about the playing games. They're always the most exciting games I think that we cover. But boy, those 4 teams, again, they could beat almost anybody.
Absolutely.
And you've seen it. And then we were talking a little bit about that, the last game you played against Hingham down in the Buddy Ferrer, and how that tournament always tends to help shape what this day might look like today.
Mm-hmm.
But talk a little bit about that game and what your boys learned from that game,
Sure.
and then what you expect going forward here.
Well, I mean, that tournament it's highly regarded for the right reasons. I mean, there's great teams down there. It's a great atmosphere. Those guys, they do a great job running this tournament. And for us, playing Hingham High School was a true test of what we're going to get for the rest of the remainder of the year, however long that may be. Hingham's a big, strong team. They come out, they skate well, they work hard, they're well coached. Tony does a great job with his program. So for us, we come out and they played us tough in the first period. We were on our heels a bit. Our goalie, Chase Congdon, made some great saves and allowed us to really kind of gather ourselves. And then we scored a goal late in the first period, and then it was up and down for the remainder of the game. So we were fortunate to get another one in the third period to kind of give ourselves some breathing room. But it was a great high school hockey game. It was fun to be a part of, and we are hoping that that's going to really set the tone for what's coming down the line.
And that was as physical a game as I've seen all year. There was a lot. There were bodies flying all over the place. And you guys have a very physical forecheck. You're hard to play against. Hingham tried to match that in that game, but it seemed like you guys just kind of wore them down as the game went on physically.
No, I think so. I mean, again, we knew what we were up against. We knew that we had to kind of not let them get their legs going. We wanted to kind of be physical and play through and make it a 200-foot game. And that's what our guys did. And it was a physical game. I mean, it was some interesting non-calls, but the referees said before the game, "Hey, we're going to let you guys decide it. We're not going to get involved with it. You guys decide it." So it was an interesting to be part of, because I think there were clearly some things that
Oh, yeah.
could have gone one way or the other, but it was great. It was great the boys were able to play that way and play hard, and you know, again, it's a good team, and we were able to come out on top. So, but I think a lot of people looking at that game, especially leading up to today, because if Hingham wins, could they be the one seed? Or does Pope Francis go to the one? And you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's great to be the one seed, but you know, being one on you know, on today's date is very different from being one on March 17th. So we're proud of it, we're happy with it, but we know this tournament, you know, 1 through 10, anybody can beat anybody.
I do want to know, how did you get to the point where you decided to put all 3 Kramers together? I've been
So-
dying to ask you that question.
So, I mean, we looked at it last year, and there were actually some times last year that we did use the 3 of them together, and whether it was right after a penalty or right after a penalty kill or something that we you know, put them together. And then this year coming in, we looked at kind of the depth, and we were strong down the middle, and I knew that we had the capability of putting Thomas back in the middle, because last year Thomas was on the left. He's a versatile kid. He can really play anywhere. He's on the point in our power play. He's a kid that you really don't worry about where he is in the ice. So for me, we were looking and saying, okay, how do we put some depth here? We're putting Thomas back in the middle with those 2, and then having Matty Lakis and then C.J. Martin. We have our 3 centers are as good as any 3 forwards around. So for us, it gave us that depth to be able to put Thomas back in the middle and have 3 guys, pivot guys in the middle. And they're excited to be together. I mean, it's a DNA thing, right? They know, they communicate well. And I've said this before, and I've said it multiple times. I mean, you can take the number off the back of those jerseys, and they all play the same way. Whether it's 27, 14, and 19, they play hard. They compete in all 3 zones. They make the team's life a little difficult, and they finish. So for those guys, it's fun to put them together and watch them. But and during the course of the year, we always, you know, reserve the right to revisit it if we needed to, and we have it to date. So
Yeah, they kind of had some driveway plays there in that game against Hingham. There was the 3-on-2 that developed that ended up being a drop pass, and I think it ended up being a finish by the side of the net.
Yeah.
But you can tell there's definitely that familial connection
Absolutely.
there on the ice that you don't get with other lineys.
No, you don't. I mean, there's just like I said, it's an innate chemistry, right? They have the ability to find each other, and they do a really good job of communicating. They're not shy to yell for a puck if they're open.
Yeah.
So they communicate well.
That's good. And looking up and down your roster, I mean, you know, so you mentioned how many players you graduated last year, you know, and so you've got an interesting mix this year of some younger bodies, some freshmen on the roster and things like that. So when you talk a little bit about some of the other players.
Sure. So I mean, again, for us last year, one of the things we tried last year, and I think it's proven this year to work well for us, is that we carried some extra guys last year, knowing that we were coming into the year with 9 seniors. We had a group of freshmen that practiced with us every day and played in some JV games and different things like that. So their transition this year, I think, was definitely the learning curve was shorter. And those guys have really emerged and stepped in and played well, especially in the blue line. I mean, on the blue line, we returned 1 guy with significant playing time. So in comes the guys that were around last year, the John Logan, the Paul Terrys, the Josh Milzos. Those guys practiced a lot with us last year, but they didn't get an opportunity to really play because we had a deep blue line. And those guys have really stepped in and taken a lot of the ice time and done very well with it. In come 2 freshmen of Declan Loughnane and Chris Romaine. Both of them have really stepped in. You know, Loughnane's exciting to watch. He's a kid that can make plays. He's dynamic, and Chris Romaine came off an injury, and he's really starting to hit his stride for us now. And Nolan Anderson is a junior that adds a little bit of you know, older guy, a little bit of strength. So we're playing. We have 8 defensemen, and we're playing pretty much all 8 of them have got playing time and consistently played. So you know, Michael Dragon is a junior as well. He's a big, strong kid. He's a converted forward to D, and he adds a little offensive talent back there as well. So all 8 defensemen have played this year. We pretty much use 7 consistently, but for a decimated blue line, those guys have really stepped in and done well for us. And up front, you know, we have some of the younger guys that are now, you're seeing that they're paying off. You know, they're guys like, obviously we talked about the guys in the middle, my seniors of C.J. Martin, Matt Lakis, and Thomas Kramer, but on the wings for those guys are some younger guys, whether it's Matty Cohane or Aiden Carey and Coleman Benson that are juniors. They've been around. They were sophomores last year playing, not as much. They've emerged into a bigger role. And then, you know, Brian Bulger and Declan Joyce and a couple of those guys that were freshmen last year that didn't get really a chance to play they're actually now getting the opportunity to play top 9 minutes. And then we have a nice complement of guys that are on the fourth line that just come out and work hard. Max DeSilva's a young guy, really buzzes around and works hard. Colin Norton, and then we have a senior with Jack Flaherty and a couple of the juniors that really kind of rotate in and out. So it's really balanced off well, and it's a group of kids that just, they're all on the same page, they all buy in, and they all work hard.
Yeah, a lot of great depth there. So preparation for this week. I'm sure you're not going to go easy on anybody. So
No, it's a long week. It's it's a kind of the the hurry up and wait. I mean, last year it seemed to work well because there was games on Wednesday, Thursday, which kind of shortened that week. We're back to the old format of waiting till Sunday, which is kind of difficult. So we're going to we'll practice hard. We'll have maybe some inter-squad scrimmages going on in the next few days just to stay sharp and keep that kind of game set or game mentality. And we'll go at it. We're off. We gave them off yesterday and today. So we'll be back tomorrow morning, and we know what we're up against, and we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, and health-wise, everybody's looking pretty good.
Everybody's healthy right now. Even Rochi's healthy, so we're good with that.
Good.
But so everyone's doing well right now. Everyone's healthy, and we come out of the Falmouth tournament. Historically, we've had a couple injuries down the stretch. One year we lost Patrick Kramer for the first couple games. Another year was Troy Latka. So we've gotten out of the last 2 years healthy, which is a good thing.
And certainly we'd be remiss not to give a big shout out to Thomas Kramer, our MHL Player of the Month and Sullivan Tire Player of the Month. So so kudos to him and the rest of the team. But nice to be able to do that for the kids, give more exposure through MyHockeyLive and
No, absolutely.
the bandwidth that we have available.
No,
to us.
we appreciate it. You guys have done a great job with it. As I said, I say this to you all the time. We appreciate it because our sport sometimes doesn't get the notoriety, the recognition it deserves. But with you guys and putting it out as much as you do, not only just with the live stream, but all the extra stuff that you guys go above and beyond for. We as coaches really appreciate it, and I know that our parents and the parents and the players appreciate it as well. So thank you guys for everything you guys do, and Jake and all the other guys that work really hard to promote our sport, but more importantly, promote our student athletes.
Well, thanks, Coach, and we'll see you next weekend.
Sounds
Of course.
good. Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much.
Sooner.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So again, BC High entering the tournament as the 1 seed and well deserved.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
surprises there, obviously. But Coach giving us some good insight into the depth of his roster and his preparation for this week, where it is true, another delay, so you got to wait till Sunday to kind of step on the ice for your next matchup, which is a long time in high school.
Yeah, if you think about what depth-wise, they've got Chase Congdon in net right now as a senior, who probably wouldn't have played this year had Luke Garrity stayed. Right, Luke Garrity's at St. Seb's. We watched him last night, and was an outstanding goaltender for them last year as they won the Super 8 championship. Chase Congdon steps in, they don't miss a beat.
Right.
That's incredible.
Right, and they graduated 9 seniors, as Coach told us, and just amazing to go 7-0 in the Catholic Conference and 16-2 and 2 overall. So just an incredible run, and I'm hoping Jake Levin's going to join us here shortly, so I can jump out and catch my breath and see what other talent is out in the hallways waiting for us. But again, MyHockeyLive, just proud to be a part of this. Jake and Brian have done an incredible job during the entire season, so I'll let them jump in, and Joey will join them, and they'll get you up to date on all the other tournament action coming up, and appreciate everybody joining us. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jake and Brandon.
You got a few people coming.
I do. I know
We're just starting to get some brackets that are being posted up on the MIAA site. The Division II North is up now, so we can look at some of the matchups there. Masconomet obviously gets a bye as the number 1 seed. And then first, we see a preliminary round matchup of Wilmington and Wakefield. And that's it for prelim matchups. And then we go right into the round of 16. So Masco will be waiting for the winner of the Wilmington versus Wakefield game. Other first round matchups, Triton versus North Andover. Boston Latin, who's been on a surge lately. They tied Canton.
Only team to tie Canton.
Only
all
team to take a
season
point
long.
from Canton, right.
Mm-hmm.
So they are playing Somerville to start, and then Winthrop. It doesn't have a matchup there for Winthrop. We'll see what that ends up being. And then Lincoln Sudbury versus Lowell Catholic. Lincoln Sudbury's been strong all season long. They come in as the 2 seed. Tewksbury versus Tewksbury, I apologize.
Tewksbury.
And then Gloucester versus Danvers.
Well, Lincoln Sudbury is a very strong team. I know they only have 2 losses all season. One of them to Division I Winchester, a team that garnered some Super 8 consideration, of course, and more recently to Boston Latin down the stretch in January. Boston Latin, we just talked about them, one of the only team, I stand corrected, to not lose outright to Canton. So Lincoln Sudbury, they play a very good schedule for a Division II school. They play up. They were at the Garden a few years ago, 2016. They wound up losing the Division II state championship game. New head coach this year, Matt Carlin, and they really haven't skipped a beat. It's their 3rd coach in the last 3 years for LS, 4th coach in the last 6 overall, and the beat goes on. It's one of those. It's a program where the players are going to more often than not hang around, and I think LS they could be a Division I team. They have that kind of talent on a year-to-year basis, and you look at their schedule. They played Malden Catholic this year. They've played Malden Catholic a lot of years, and it's not necessarily LS's fault that MC wasn't as strong as it usually was. It just in terms of garnering more consideration for, well, I guess power seeding yet in the Division II tournament. But I've been very impressed from what I've seen from LS over the course of the season, and I think right now they're probably my team to beat coming out of that Division II North field.
Yeah, 17-2-2 to finish the season.
Yep.
Very strong. Certainly, Garner's mentioning they play against and defeated Waltham, MC again, like as you
Waltham
said,
too, of course.
and Shrewsbury.
Yep.
That's their last. The final 3 games of their season were Waltham, MC, and Shrewsbury. And you look at that at the beginning of the season, you go, we got a murderer's row to finish the season. We're gonna be looking good as things go into the tournament if we're in the mix there at that point.
And it wound up being 3 teams that didn't even make the postseason, which is wild. Even though it was 2 defending state champions at the time, Shrewsbury in Division III, Waltham Division I, and MC being them. Although they did miss the tournament last year. Now LS, they're still very battle tested. The DCL MVC Division II or Tier 2, I guess. Still some strong teams in that league. North Andover certainly comes to mind. Methuen, generally strong. Looking up and down this bracket, So, yeah, I think LS. I'm standing by Tewksbury. How can we forget them? And Boston Latin, but I think LS, Boston Latin. Those are the 2 teams to really keep an eye on out of that Division II North tournament.
Hey guys.
Hey Jimmy, what's happening?
I'm going to put my opinion in there. I think Boston Latin's definitely the team to beat. Tying Canton, that may have helped Canton's resume just a little bit, proving that when someone does give them some adversity, they won in that game in overtime. I think that's pretty impressive.
Sure.
But Masconomet, if I'm saying that correctly, they're probably one of the teams to beat too as well, obviously being the 1 seed, but just getting the recognition of being on that watch list, that gives them just that little bit of momentum, hopefully, make them feel good about themselves.
Well, Masco they lost their season opener. I'm drawing a blank on who they played in the opener. They wound up reeling off 16 straight wins. That is so hard to do. I don't care what league you're in. And they're a pretty good league up there in the Cape Ann League. And Masco, I think, is another, they're a contender. I don't want to call a 1 seed a sleeper.
Yeah.
But this is what you get with a lack of power seeding. And again, I think the Masco is a very good program, very good team. They play a very challenging non-league slate. Maybe a little adversity before the postseason started would be good for them, rather than having the weight of that winning streak on their minds. I know, Hanover, for example, just to pick a team from last year, Division III South, they started 1-0-1. And then they didn't lose again right up until the state championship at the Garden. Now, I don't know if the winning streak was something that was weighing on their minds, but, Hanover this year, they go and lose to Canton with 2 games left in the regular season. It just, in terms of, it can be good to humble yourself before the tournament starts. Not on purpose. You're not going out there to lose, but if that's the way it happens, sometimes it can certainly be good to not have the weight of this winning streak on your mind as a team.
Yeah, I did want to ask John Flaherty about that. They go and they lose to Don Bosco right off the drop.
That's another good example.
And then they rip off a bunch of wins, and then they have the 2-1 loss to Framingham. But they haven't been. Nobody's been able to touch them since then. And what that does for them going in as the number one overall seed, probably right now on paper the best team in the state,
Oh yeah.
without question, and to have to go into the Super 8 without having that safety net underneath them of being a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, where if you lose you get bounced back into Division
Right.
1.
You have to wonder if what they're thinking about that Zavarian matchup, because they played Zavarian twice this year and they beat them both times, so there's a little familiarity between those two teams. And if maybe if Zavarian doesn't get through, they got to play someone that they're not as familiar with. You wonder if that comes into play when they're thinking of that matchup.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I think BC High, no matter who they wind up playing in their first game, I think they're going to be favored. I think they're going to be favored in every game they play this postseason. That's not to say they're infallible, but we talked about it when John Flaherty was on here. They have the best player in high school hockey, in Thomas Kramer. In that match, I think the team that has the best player more often than not is going to go on a run, a player that can put the team on his back. But it's really not just Thomas Kramer. It's the other two Kramer brothers. It's Matt Lakis, another 4-year player out of Charlestown for BC High. It's a very underrated defensive core as well, I believe, whether you're looking at Michael Dragon, John Logan, Josh Milso, Declan Loughnane, the outstanding freshman out of Milton. They're just so strong in the back end. And for all the headlines the Kramers, rightfully so, garner, it's the back line that really makes that engine run and that separates BC from the rest of the field, whether that's Pope Francis, Hingham, which also is great in the back end, so is Pope Francis, and Arlington, all these other contenders. I firmly believe that defense is why BC High is the 1 seed and why they're the favorite to win the Super 8 tournament.
Well, in the playoffs, teams are going to shut down your best players
Yep.
more likely than not. And if you don't have that defense to shut down the other team's best players in the deep scoring, you're not going to win games in the playoffs. If your first line's not scoring, you need someone else that can come in and help that top line get back going.
I know BC, they wound up scoring about 90 goals this regular season, 91, 92. That's right on par with where they've been the last several years. I know a couple years ago they cracked 110 in the regular season. And that was a team that did come up short, I think. Well, they did, obviously. Came up short 2016 in the Super 8. They lost in the semifinals. And this year, even though they're still scoring all these goals, they're not as, I think, top-line heavy. We know the Kramers are the line that they are, and that is their best line. But they do have options beyond the Kramers that they may not have had in a top line or beyond their top line a few years ago. And they can get some point production from their defense, whether that's Loughnane, who's had a hat trick at various points this season. We saw Michael Dragon score a couple goals down in Falmouth, or at least a goal. We saw Paul Terry score a goal that really kind of broke Hingham's back, I think, really defeated their morale in the Buddy Ferrer Classic Championship game. So they're getting production from the blue line, and that's just another thing that makes them so scary. But I want to ask you guys, after BC High, who's the best team in this field? You can say Pope Francis, the number 2 seed, but is there another team a little further down maybe that we're not talking about enough?
I'm going to say Framingham, just because I like the way their team's built. I think they have a team that's built for a playoff type scenario. Beating teams 2-1, 3-2, stuff like that. That's how you win games. Not in the Super 8, you're not going to get that many games where it's 5-0, 6-0 like that.
Very few.
Yeah, so if you can play those tight score games and not get rattled when you give up a goal, I like their chances. Plus, they came to play against BC High, so they can come to play against anyone.
And you know what? If Thomas Kramer is the best player in the state, I think 1A is Mike Tersoni, who's been absurd for Framingham this season. And he was a sophomore back when they went to the Garden in the winter of 2017. Framingham regressed last year. They only won 5 games in the regular season. Made the tournament because the Bay State carry was down a little bit, so they still won the league. There's a fire that burns in that kid. I don't think he's too happy with the way the last 2 seasons ended for Framingham, especially last season. Being 5-11-3 or 5-11-4, whatever it was in the regular season. It's not just Tersoni, of course. There are other players on that Framingham team making this run possible. Jake Handy, the outstanding goaltender. I mean, you don't beat BC High without getting contributions between the pipes, straight up. They're very dangerous in this tournament. And I think it's good for Framingham they didn't get Hingham in the first round, because Framingham hasn't beat Hingham in the last 10 seasons.
Wow.
things change. Obviously, it's high school, so the cycles go every 4 years. The team's tied a few years back. I think it was the winter 2016, but Hingham seems to have Framingham's number, whereas Framingham and Arlington, there's almost no history, not that I know of.
No,
So I think that's good for both teams, for Arlington as well, going in clean. Arlington, they kind of have Hingham's number. Hingham beat them once in terms of recent history, 2016 play-in game. Other than that, it's either been Arlington victories in the Super 8 or ties. So Hingham doesn't have a win against Arlington in some time. Framingham, there's just no history there. I think it's a good draw for Framingham.
Now, I don't think there are any sleepers in the Super 8 by any stretch of the imagination, right? I mean, obviously these 10 teams are in here on their own merits.
Yep.
If there's a team that's going to go out and surprise people, I really do think it's the number 10 Zavarian team. I think the Zavarian Hawks have the talent there. They've got the experience, that, despite the fact that they missed the tournament last year. But really, it's 3 reasons, and those 3 reasons are Barton, Pompicelli, right, and Matty Ryan. I mean, between the 3 of them, they've combined for about 100 points.
Yep.
So there's no question that there's high-end talent on that Zavarian team. Now, they do have to get through Duxbury. It's got 2 outstanding goaltenders in the prelim game. Unfortunately for Duxbury, you can only play one of them. So, Coach John Blake's going to have a hard time, I'm sure, deciding which goaltender he's going to choose to pick, as those guys have gone 50-50 basically the entire season. You wrote an article in the Globe outlining, sort of what those 2 boys have been able to do as the season has gone on. But, despite the fact that game is going to happen, one of those 2 teams will continue playing in the Division I tournament.
I think the loser of that game is going to be the favorite in the Division I South tournament. Now, Marshfield could lose its play-in game, and they'll also drop back down. So it's it's like you said, Brandon, that top line, it might not garner as many headlines as the Kramer trio, but you're right. Ryan, Barton, Pompicelli, they've been playing together for 3 years now. Barton, the senior, Pompicelli, and Ryan, the juniors, obviously. Experience matters. I know Zavarian, they weren't in the Super 8 last year, so certainly I think they were a little agitated by that. And then I think they were certainly a little flustered that things may not have gone their way this season, but they were able to win the game that mattered the most on Tuesday against Melrose to ensure that they would at least get a crack at the play-in game. I don't think we've heard the last from the Hawks. I think out of those teams in the bottom 4, the play-ins, they are probably the biggest threat to win and go on a little run. Now, that said, I'm not going to be surprised if either Nate Romanelli or Steve Pisani pitches a shutout against them on Monday night. I don't know who's going to start that game for the Dragons either. It's a good problem to have if you're Duxbury, to have two of the, call them the top 10 goaltenders in the state.
Right.
But like you said, you can only play one of them. It's different than having 2 of the top 10 forwards where you can throw them out there and bing, bang, boom, you're all set. 2 goalies becomes, a little problematic in that sense. But, yeah, that's going to be an unbelievable game. I think first to 1 wins. I think it's going to be a 1-0
really
kind of game.
Right.
Yeah, because, both these teams, for as much talent as they have up front, make no mistake about it, it's the defense that matters for them, the goaltending that matters for them. And that's why they're in this Super 8 in the play-in round. So, yeah, I'd take the under in the Zavarian Duxbury game on Monday, no question.
Well, with Zavarian, in the playoffs, you can feel a little bit better about playing your first line every other shift, because it's winter. You go home, well, technically not in this circumstance, but it's the playoffs, and you can feel better about just playing that top line. Try to get as many goals as you can, because, well, those 2 goalies are going to be pitching pretty good games, so you got to hope to just get a couple in there and just don't look back.
It is interesting, this concept of playing with house money in the play-in game, because it's not win or go home. It's you lose, you go.
It's a win-win.
You can go on a run. Now, it's been a while since the loser of a Super 8 play-in game even made it to the Garden. I think you got to go back to Braintree in 2014, and I believe this is the game I'm thinking of. Braintree's disallowed goal against CM in the play-in game, 2014. So that
that was something else. I mean, and that's a game I think we had on film. And as we're watching it, you could see the puck goes in the net. And I remember going into the school the next day and thinking to myself, if we ever had a game that meant that much and we lost because of a non-goal that should have been a goal, and there's video of it somewhere out there, and we can't look at it, and even the guy behind the net had flipped the red light on.
Right.
And in the situation there, the officials don't usually have excuse me, they don't usually have the guy behind the net working the red light. In this instance, in the state tournament, they got the guy working the red light. He flips the light on. They do not conference with him. Now, the officials actually had the right to go and ask him for his opinion because he technically is an off-ice official, right. And they didn't.
Yeah.
So that was really something. And then Braintree truly is playing with house money at that point.
Yeah, and they almost went all the way, and that would have been an awesome story for
Yeah.
them to say, all right, fine.